How you doing, wrestling fans, and welcome to another edition of John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight podcast, the only wrestling podcast that brings you back 30 years every single week with vintage audio featuring some of the biggest names of that time. The Pro Wrestling Spotlight covered all the news stories and breaking developments that happened in real time, and now we get to relive those moments with you right here on this podcast. Today, we will review, along with Patreon executive producer and friend of the show, Anthony Pyrus, the Pro Wrestling This Week and Pro Wrestling Spotlight shows from May the 15th, 1993. But first, go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/John Arezzi. $5 a month gets you in the door. You get all of the archives on audio, over 200 shows. Like today, it's a show like 218. So, I mean, you have all these shows up there. There's other vintage audio clips for other levels. You get vintage video. You get 8mm films. You get opportunities like Anthony Pyrus has by appearing on this program. So there's so much content there, and it really helps with the production costs for this program. Patreon.com/John Arezzi. Let us bring on Marsh, our creative director, our producer. And I have to first... Marsh, how are you, first and foremost?
How's it going? Doing pretty good.
Doing good. I have to pay you a very high compliment, my friend.
Oh,
the last week's episode with Ron Scholar on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Pro Wrestling Spotlight, show number 77, when we brought Ron on. That was, I think, the best video version that we've ever done, or you've ever done, because you edit it and put these little very cool things in it, especially when Ron is talking about that AAA show in Mexico City from April 30th, 1993. Yeah. You had that match in there. It really was cool to see, and it was a great show, not just with Ron reminiscing, but Cactus Jack making that call in, and all the visuals that are in that program. I really enjoyed it. I watched it start to finish on YouTube and up on the big screen TV. So in 75-inch color, Sony HD, it was just so cool. I've never really done that before.
Yeah.
But it really felt like I was watching something special. And I mean, and even the background, everything pops visually. So I just wanted to thank you for that hard work you put into it. And last week was really, really, really a good one. So if you haven't checked it out, check it out, patreon.com. Nope, I'm sorry. You could go there anyhow and give me $5. But go to youtube.com/Pro Wrestling Spotlight.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun putting together. And thanks to Roy for hooking me up with the YouTube link for the match itself, so I could kind of put it in there a little bit. And then, it was a lot of fun. I like that one.
Yeah, it was. And, and of course, that show on August the 28th we'll be covering, because I did a remote from California when we were out there for the AAA show. So that would be another good time to play that actual La Revancha triple threat match. So, we'll work on that as we get into August here. So anyway, you're out there still on the West Coast. You're in California and visiting grandparents. Hanging loose. And, but yeah, I mean, it's good to be back in a regular regimen here. And I just want to give a couple of updates. We had a poll, which I told everybody we were going to do for patrons. We're not going to release the failed attempt at a reunion show to the general public. It's only going to be for patrons because it was so horrific. But
for their own protection.
The people want it. The people want it unedited. They want it as it is. 88% of the pollsters want it. And the other 13%, which actually equals 101%, so I don't know how Patreon got that. They're like, if it's heavily edited, still release it. But everybody wants it. No one says not to air it. So we're going to give it to you.
Yeah, I saw that. There was 0% that said don't bother. Everyone said they wanted to see it in some fashion, and I was like, I would have thought someone would have said pass.
Now we will have that. Would that be? That would be strictly for patrons then. I mean, because we're not going to release it we're not going to release it to the general public. So maybe we just do, the video version of it.
Yeah, that's what I figure. Pop up
Because-
video version and link it in Patreon.
Yeah, make sure you take a couple of gummies before you watch it, because you'll see the Power Twins upside down, sideways, feedback. It could be a very exhilarating experience for those who watch this thing.
I enjoyed when they were speaking and all you saw was their cheek, because how they were holding the phone all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's a clusterfuck, like we said before. So anyway, you're going to get it. You may not get it this week, but, it could be sometime next week, because I know you're working on the Superstar Billy Graham show, which is actually going to be our next episode after this one. This is show number 78, obviously covering May 15th. But the next show, we will do the Billy Graham tribute with George Napolitano and Keith Elliott Greenberg. And I also found the Raw interview I did with Billy Graham back in March of 1990. So we'll put that up for patrons as well. And got a couple of promos that we'll put up as bonuses, and another Superstar Billy Graham photo set. So we'll do that next week. But without any further ado, our executive producer, one of the two that we have on our Patreon, Anthony Pyrus, is here with us, direct from New England.
John Arezzi, as always, it is an honor to be in your presence. You, much like Billy Graham, are the man of the hour, the man with the power, too sweet to be sour, the reflection of perfection, the number one selection. And Marsh, it's good to see you too, I guess. How you doing?
Doing good, man. When you reached out, because I know you were supposed to be on the show that you were like clamoring to be on, the WCW fiasco in New York City. But for some reason you did forget about that, or whatever happened. But here you are.
It's great to be here, Marsh. With all respect, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
I was just curious when you finally got to hear the playbacks of the Paramounts from the original tapes. Did that bring you back to it right away?
John was way too kind to the show, to be honest with you. Because you got to bear in mind, John, you lived in Long Island at the time. I drove the 2.5 hours from Rhode Island and fought New York traffic. I got home at 4:15 in the morning, and I swear to God, I got home at 4:15, went to bed, got up for school the next day, college. I woke up an hour and a half later with pink eye. Wow. So perfect ending to a nightmarish weekend.
I left early.
You gave me pink eye.
I left early. I didn't stay for the whole show. And
Lucky you.
Pink eye.
Lucky you.
Once Cactus Jack lost, John Arezzi left.
I was
Anthony got pink eye. Good.
That thing spreads pretty quick, so I needed to get out of Dodge.
Yeah. Fantastic.
But today we have a couple of cool shows to review. May 15th, 1993, both the Pro Wrestling This Week show, which originally aired on WNYG, and the evening show, Pro Wrestling Spotlight on WEVD with the Warlord. And as we get to this, I'll explain to you what was going on and why I really needed to get the Warlord on there to explain what happened to him with his steroid arrest.
This one was kind of guest heavy. It was a little hard reducing the clips too. We have a couple clips that are a little bit longer than typical. A couple of them that are just over the 5 minutes, where we try to keep it, around that. But a few of them, it was tough to figure out exactly where to clip. There's a lot of good stuff.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it's going to be a good one. And Anthony, also, you just came back from overseas, correct? Were you over in Ireland?
Oh, my God. Thank you for asking. My wife and I took the dream trip to Ireland, London, and then Paris. Could not have had a better trip. It was amazing. And I saw Bruce Springsteen. So if you recall, the last Zoom call we had, I called you from a Springsteen show in Boston.
Right.
God, I wish you did a Zoom that night, because I was live in Dublin that night.
That's amazing to see Bruce. I know how much of a Springsteen fan you are, but to get to see him in Ireland, my goodness. Awesome.
And yes,
it was a great trip. When did you get
I'm
back?
Representing. It was a dream. It was a dream trip. My wife and I have been planning this for years. We finally, my kids we got both of our kids through college, so we can now do things like this. Yeah. So we were excited. So Italy is next.
Oh, very nice. You're taking me on that trip, you know.
Absolutely, John. You're always welcome, buddy. On me.
I got my passport. I'm ready to go. I haven't been to my native land.
Let's do it.
Take me to Italy.
2025.
Yeah, I need to get my passport. I was thinking about that last time we talked to Conan. He said if I was in San Diego for an extended period of time to hit him up, he'll take me to a show in Tijuana. I didn't have my passport, so I was like, I'll leave it.
That's reason enough to get it.
That's what I said. But they're all backed up.
Yeah,
so I'm going to get mine.
Yeah, that's right too. It takes a while to get them. But
yep.
I got mine renewed a year ago. It took me 3 weeks, so it ain't that bad. They say it's backed up, but they can get it to you.
You live a charmed life, my friend.
Yes. Plus, I get to talk to you guys. So yes, charmed it is.
Yeah. Well, let's go back 30 years, Marsh. Let's see what we got for these two shows that I think people will really enjoy when they hear them.
I think so too. This is the opening to your morning show. I left in the opening because I love that there was I don't believe it was a technical difficulty. It sounds like it was a distinct decision made by their production.
Mm-hmm.
But it also ran.
But I wasn't in a good mood either. Was I in a good mood, or was I in a shitty mood?
You were pretty upset this whole time because, and I've got clips of it.
I'll explain. As we get into it, because I have the backstory for everybody.
You remember all of it, good, because you are really disenfranchised right now. But this leads right into the capsule, and then you guys talk for just a minute after the capsule. That's all in here together,
okay? Just
as one chunk, and then we can talk about it on the other side.
Got it.
Now here's your host, John Arezzi.
Good morning, everybody. A little reverb in my voice today. Is that a new thing here at the station for talk radio? I feel like I'm in New York City. Hey, WABC from years ago. Harry Harrison, Dan Ingram. I like it, Tom Ross. Is this your concept? No. Who's Jim's? Very good, very good. Yes, we're here for another week of exciting wrestling talk for you, and I don't know how many exciting things happened in the wrestling world this week. All I know is, speaking personally, I'm getting sick of this business. This business is filled with sleazy people, and I don't feel like getting into it, but it's a pretty sick place to make a living. We're going to bring Donny Laible on right off the bat. Donny is not one of those sleazy people I was referring to in the top of the show. Don, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thanks for the compliment.
No, you're not. Well, actually, I've known you probably longer than most individuals that I've dealt with in this crazy business. And a very good, lasting, long friendship.
In many more years, hopefully.
You can't hear this, but I feel like I'm in an echo chamber. They put a new little reverb on the voice over here. I feel like Dan Ingram.
Well, some money being put into the station, maybe, huh?
Yeah, this one costs about 22 cents to put this little feature in.
Oh boy. So let's see what's going on today. A few things happening noteworthy. Leading off the capsule, Japan takes front center stage. Current World Championship Wrestling heavyweight titleist Big Van Vader debuted last week for the UWFI in Tokyo's Budokan Hall. Now, he won in less than 4 minutes, but what makes his appearance extremely noteworthy was his not appearing for New Japan Wrestling, the promotion who has exclusive rights to the WCW and NWA champions through a talent trading agreement with WCW. Now, Vader did wear the WCW belt into the ring, but had a different introduction. He was billed as the man formerly known as Big Van Vader, Super Vader. Now, New Japan owns the rights to the Big Van Vader gimmick, so expect some legal action coming from this one. Following up on last week's mention of Onita and Terry Funk's clash inside a barbed wire exploding bomb-rigged ring, the attendance was 41,000 and an estimated gate of $1.8 million was generated. Check your local listings for a current affair in the coming week for a piece on the Von Erichs. Tentatively, this segment will run on this coming Monday or on Thursday. There are new Global Wrestling Federation Tag Team Champions last Friday in Dallas' Sportatorium. The Sicilian Studs, Guido Falcone and Vito Mussolini,
my favorite team,
won the straps from the Ebony Experience. Like those names. Today in Philadelphia, TV tapings continue for Eastern Championship Wrestling. Look for the June 19th ECW show to be headlined with a chain match between Terry Funk and Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert. Top ticket prices for the World Wrestling Federation SummerSlam show on August 30th will be $45. And speaking of the Fed, don't expect to see Friar Ferguson, at least a character, anymore. Mike Shaw, who portrayed the character, is still under contract to the WWF and anticipates another role. For you veteran fans, remember the name the Spaceman Frank Hickey back from the 1950s? Well, he's been dusted off and has resurfaced in the USWA. Look for him to team with Brian Christopher in special matches involving referee Frank Morrell. Well, checking out the out-of-town match sites, today WCW is in New Orleans. The WWF runs in Austin, Texas, and San Francisco. USWA action will be in Nashville, and tomorrow Smoky Mountain Wrestling comes to Johnson City, Tennessee. The next 2-day WWF TV taping dates are set for Monday, May 24th and Tuesday, May 25th in Sydney and Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. Finally, from the scrapbook files this week in Pro Wrestling 1976, 17 years ago, in Long Island City's Sunnyside Gardens, the Masked Executioners defeated Jose Gonzalez and Billy Whitewolf. And in Los Angeles at the Olympic Auditorium was the team of Roddy Piper and Crusher Verdue. They triumphed over Chavo Guerrero and Tony Rocco. For Pro Wrestling This Week, I'm Don Laible reporting. Capsule time, 10:09.
Donnie, Frank Hickey, is that the original?
The original Spaceman. Can you believe it?
He must be about 80 years old.
If that. And I was reading that and was told by somebody who was at the show that he came out in his original Spaceman Hickey suit. Incredible that the man's even making it to the ring.
Was it faded?
I'm sure it was. Incredible.
I guess they must have developed, the Spaceman Frank Hickey must have developed a new form of steroid, which he probably induced and is back in the ring. That's a phenomenal
Remember
story.
the big eyebrows, and incredible that this guy is still going. But
yes, well, Ox Baker was a protege of his.
Yeah,
they taught him how to grow his eyebrows like that.
They may even put the Spaceman in against Onita next. Who knows?
Must be 80 years
I was all over the place with some crazy shit.
It's great. The Ebony Experience I thought was cool hearing, because you don't hear about them very much, but they became Harlem Heat.
Yep.
But yeah, I like you soaking up all the reverb.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of, I guess, a decision that programming made. Jim Pierce, who was the program director at NYG back then. It could have been another tweak in the format where they wanted the on-air talent to sound like they're in a tunnel. Because WABC years ago, there used to be a lot of those AM jocks years ago that would sound like they were in an echo chamber. That's kind of the way radio was back then in the 60s.
John, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
And this struck me hard. As you know, I've been a listener / patron since episode 1. It sounds like you are. I cite this because you said the wrestling business is so sleazy. It sounds like you're losing your love for what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that somewhat I know you love Donny Laible. I know you love, the whole thing, but are you starting to lose your love a little bit for what you're doing?
Absolutely.
Well,
I was.
Didn't you shut it down in 3 months after this?
I did.
Yeah.
I shut it down for over a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll be getting to that as we get to the end of the summer of 93. And I just abruptly say I'm done, which we'll get to. And then I don't go back on the air till August of 94.
This felt like definitely the beginning of that.
Because I remember how freewheeling the first, year was, from April 89 to maybe the time Herb Abrams crap hit the fan. It seems right now you've lost your love, not your passion, but you've lost your love of what you're doing.
Yeah, because doing the talk show was always fun, bringing the guest on, doing the insider stuff, covering the steroid stuff, the sex scandals was trying, the Russo stuff was trying, but at this point I was segueing into promoter, more than the conventions.
Right.
So that is why this particular week got to me as it did, because this was the week, and Ron was alluding to it on the last show, that we had meetings with Jake, and it was the Ultimate Warrior, it was Jim Hellwig who had agreed, and I had got this overseas tour happening. We were leaving for Southeast Asia in at the end of June. I hadn't announced it yet.
And this is mid-May at this point, right?
Yeah. So
We're
this
6
tour
weeks away.
this tour is a go. And I was dealing with a guy named Mike. You're going to know this, Anthony. Mike Appel. That name is probably somebody that you know really well, right?
Very well. Jesus Christ. Mike, right. You referenced him in the show.
Yeah, Mike Appel was introduced to me by Ron Scholar. And simultaneously, Ron introduced me to an agent in New Jersey named John Regner with a company called Worldwide Entertainment Marketing. And he had all these overseas contacts, and we were going to put together a tour of Southeast Asia. So anyway, with Mike Appel and his name and I, they said, well, maybe you should get Mike involved and he can open up some doors. And Mike still knows a lot of people. And of course I know the whole history with Springsteen and Mike. It started off really great and then it turned ugly and it was the end of it. So around this time I took Mike Appel to an ECW show, which might've been a month before. I don't recall off the top of my head, but Mike was then networking and hobnobbing with the guys, and then kind of tells me, and I have actually a recorded phone conversation with him because that he is like, well, your role is going to be diminished, and I'll be the figurehead of the promotion, and I'm like, fuck no. So I told him to go fuck himself and.
John, not to kiss your ass, but there's a line from a musical. If you'd come today, you would have reached a whole nation. Do you sometimes lament the fact that you, God, in 2022 with all those 2023 with all those scandals that have broken out, you would have been the foremost journalist. Forget Dave Meltzer. Forget, with respect, Mike Johnson. You were the first guy to do that stuff. You were the first guy to actually, report wrestling the way it was. And when you talked about, I'm hearing you say this, plus what you said at the beginning where the wrestling business is so sleazy, are you just...
Well, that was because of Mike Appel.
You're fed up.
That was also because of that week with the Ultimate Warrior where I had a budget of the show. We sold the shows for $250,000, which was a big chunk of change back then. If you look at, $1993 in comparison to $2023, that's a major chunk of money. So I'm booking the talent, and my idea for a main event to go overseas for the 2-week tour was going to be Jake against Ultimate Warrior for IWAS International Wrestling All-Stars title. I cut a deal with Warrior, $25,000 for the 2-week tour, which is not 93 bad.
In 93, that's great money. That's
good money. And he had done another overseas tour, and then he didn't sign his contract. And then he called me up and he put the hammer down on me and he wanted 50. And I'm like, holy shit, now we're having, we have promoters that we've told that he's going to be in a main event. And I talked to Scholar, I talked to Regna, and it was going to come out of my cut. Because, this was going to be a big payday for me. Yeah. So I agreed to pay him the 50. Okay? So I'm in Scholar's office, and I have a call with Warrior. In the lobby, right outside Scholar's door, Jake the Snake Roberts, Diamond Dallas Page, because Jake is like, you got to bring DDP. He's going to be my babysitter. He'll keep me out of trouble. I knew DDP. He wasn't a big prominent star at the time, so I agreed he could come in. I made a deal with Jake for, it could have been $15,000 and DDP for about $5,000. And here we are. We're on the phone with Warrior, and he's like, John, I can't do it for 50. I need 100. And I'm like, I can't give you 100. And he's on speakerphone. Okay. And I'm getting hot with him. And he goes, if I don't get 100, I'm not going. And so I just said, you know what? Go fuck yourself. I'm not giving you that. And I hung up on him. And I was fucking hot.
As pleasant a guy as you are, Jack, I can see it.
Jake burst in and he's like, you were going to pay that son of a bitch $50,000 and me, you're giving me this, and I'm not going unless I get 25. And I'm like, that's what that's what the comments were about the sleaziness in the opening of the NYG show, because I had enough.
I knew there was something else besides the steroid try. I knew there was something.
Then I'm bringing Warlord and Barbarian as a Powers of Pains. I'd booked them. And then I find out in the sheets that, Warlord gets busted for steroid possession. Because I asked all these guys, because I was such an anti-steroid advocate, right?
You had
Are you on it? Are you not on it? And everyone says, no, we're not on it. I can't drug test everybody. And, I have to ask them. And then I find out that Warlord was busted for possession. So I'm getting ahead of myself, because that's going to be for the evening show. And then I'll explain what he told me and the whole thing. So that's where I was. And all I was trying to do was make a fucking living. And this Southeast Asia tour, because if this went well, we had promoters in India. We had promoters in different parts of the world, Malaysia. I mean, all of these people wanted marquee wrestling, because none of these guys that they had seen on WWF TV were ever over there. This is before WWF went international. So using that marquee, that exposure they got, I was getting ex-WWF guys for the tour, because they all had TV.
Since 1989, you were always this close to the big one.
Yeah, well, the Southeast Asia tour I didn't make money on it. I didn't lose money on it.
Right.
I made a nice piece of change on it. It really kept me going for 3-4 months. But it was always a roller coaster, and I was getting tired with dealing with the individuals. It was just wearing me down.
Right, of course.
The phone call that you had, was that before the tour even kicked off?
The phone call I had with
Warrior that Jake listened to?
Yeah, it was that week.
Where was it at?
It was at Scholar's office in Manhattan.
At his office? And Jake and DDP were there to sign contracts, I imagine?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And there was also AAA. It could have been that Marriott Marquee meeting that Scholar talked about. Because he said it was around that time. So that's why I was like, he was in to sign contracts and talk about AAA. And Jake was in town almost every week working for Tommy D at the time.
Now, once you told Warrior to go fuck himself, that opened up two things in my mind real quick. You were originally going to pay him 25, then it went up to 50, and then Jake's only asking for 10 more. Did that seem like something that you were going to do, or were you telling?
I told him yes. I told him I'd give him the 25.
You said 25 is fine?
Yeah.
I think that's an easy yes if he's going to be your new headliner.
Yeah, but then they tried to hold me up overseas.
Well, yeah. Well, you give a mouse a cookie, you know what I mean?
The fact that I know someone that told the Ultimate Warrior to go fuck himself is awesome. Sorry.
Hey, I was developing. I thought I had a good relationship with the guy. He'd come on in February, did a shoot interview with me. He was doing that thing for Kerry Von Erich. And it was just kind of like, all right, and he's going to draw money over there. Yeah. As much as I didn't think he was a great performer ever, he had that marquee. But maybe it was hypocritical on my fault, because I'm like,
he was the Warrior though.
But he was the Warrior, and it was Jake the Snake and the other guys on that tour, Greg the Hammer Valentine and Bob Orton.
I wouldn't have done anything different.
And Medusa and Wendy Richter and Pat Tanaka and all of the stars that I booked on that show, and then bringing Conan on it and Paulie Dangerously and Kevin Sullivan and Woman and it was a fucking great lineup. It was really packed. So, and the Power Twins and Sonny Beach, my friends, and Ted Petty and Ted, Rocco Rock and Johnny Rotten, who, Mike Dorham. It was from top to bottom. It was a really good show. And I shot it with, multi cameras. And so I have all of that footage that I share with patrons. But it was really cool. I did some good promoting, and I thought that this was going to be the beginning of some really cool stuff on the promotion side for me.
I'm going to say one more thing to Anthony, and then we're going to get back on track here. Okay. Anthony, knowing who you know and knowing how Warrior is, I bet you know more than one person who's told Warrior that.
Yes, I know. Oddly enough, John, you're the oldest person I know who told the Warrior to go F himself. But yeah.
Yeah, there's probably at least a couple more. Let's see, as you guys... you and Donnie talk about the craziness of the exploding match with Terry Funk and Onita, the Vader conversation kept going. The idea that he is showing up in the UWFI with the WCW title when they have an exclusive contract with NJPW, and you guys are wondering how that was going to turn out legally. Thez was announced for Slamboree. You were excited about. Current Affairs is running a full episode on Kerry Von Erich. Do you remember that show going on?
I remember talking about it. I don't remember specifically seeing it, or remember if I did see it. I don't remember what it was.
The only thing that was super notable about you guys describing it was that Meltzer was interviewed a lot for it. So I thought maybe. Yeah. And then you do just say you've been generally upset and disgusted with the wrestling business lately. But you get Mark Madden on the phone because he wrote an article for
Torch.
Torch, yeah, about WCW effectively not testing for steroids, and in this regard is endorsing it. So I brought just one clip of Mark Madden. You guys kind of have a 3-part conversation. Yeah. I thought I would just get the top part, and then we could talk a little bit more after that. But this is. You called him to see he was going to be on the night show, but you just want to talk to him now.
It wasn't an open letter to the Justice Department too.
Yeah,
the DEA,
the feds, the DEA, DEA. Okay,
yeah, about how they need to look at it. So let's start here. Mark Madden, you still are reverb heavy, talking about this article that he wrote.
How you doing today? I'm sorry this is short notice and all, but I got a copy of Pro Wrestling Torch just a couple of days ago, issue number 225, and you had an open letter to the DEA. And in my opinion, now you are a columnist. You have been a columnist for the Torch for a long time. You also with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette as a sports writer, and you cover a lot of high school sports there. You're one of the most controversial wrestling columnists in the business today. I'm talking journalism. I'm not talking about the newsstand magazines for the most part. Mark, the column that you wrote really touched a nerve inside me, and it should touch a nerve inside everybody at WCW and on the independent scene right now, because the steroid problem is not over with in this business.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, obviously Vince McMahon at the World Wrestling Federation has, I believe, largely cleaned up the act of his wrestlers, certainly not by choice, but by necessity in order to save his own skin, because obviously there is a federal investigation going on with his company right now. The other, World Championship Wrestling, has paid lip service, certainly, to cleaning up the steroid problem, but obviously just does not care. I mean, every so often, they'll threaten to have tests, threaten to do this, threaten to do that, but, end up doing nothing. And I believe in this case, John, after this period of time, if you do nothing about a problem, you may as well endorse it. I mean, what they're doing is saying to their wrestlers, use steroids. We will do nothing about it, and the wrestlers certainly are using steroids in World Championship Wrestling.
There's no question about that. When you look at a lot of the guys that are working in that company, you could just tell. And also on the independent scene, the revelation that came about this week with the Warlord being arrested. Actually, I talked to him 2 days ago. He says the arrest took place not this week as it had been reported, but it took place in November. But he still was caught in possession with 11 different types of steroids. And here's a situation where these guys are just like laughing at the law. And something has got to be done about it. And your column in the Torch this week really spelt it out. If I'm sure that the executives of World Championship Wrestling read the Torch. Ted Turner himself should read this column.
Well, I believe basically here's the problem at World Championship Wrestling from the top on down. Mm-hmm. I don't even believe Ted Turner knows he really has a company, and if he doesn't really know what it involves. Okay, I believe that he is totally in a hands-off mode when it comes to World Championship Wrestling. Bill Shaw and Bob Dew wouldn't know a wrestling company if it fell apart around them, which it's about to. I mean, basically, they've just let this company go down, down, down in every facet to the point where this is really, by comparison, a minor problem compared to a lot of the stuff they're facing. And Ole Anderson and Dusty Rhodes, who were in charge of the creative process, basically just think it's all right. I mean, obviously, they've come along in an era where anything that can be done to promote the product is fine. And, to be honest, steroids are okay with them. I mean, it doesn't really affect their day-to-day lives, so certainly why would they care? I think the lone voice of sanity there right now is Eric Bischoff, who obviously is sort of inexperienced at the wrestling business. To be honest, if I had a wrestling company right now, I'd want someone inexperienced in charge of it instead of the same people who have made the same old mistakes for years and years. Whether Eric has enough power to do something about the steroid policy down there, I don't know. But I think basically the problem there is that no one cares.
Yeah, what is it going to take? It's going to take a situation that happened to Warlord, where it's going to cause a great deal of embarrassment for Ted Turner if one of his major stars is busted into the airport, or if there's a bust at an arena, or who knows what happens, where there's a shipment sent to someone's house, one of the stars of WCW, and is that what it's going to take? And it's really getting to that point where you say, well, that's the only thing that's going to make them wake up to the problem.
It's going to take someone being arrested, or it's going to take someone dropping dead.
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't believe that one of those two possibilities is very far off of World Championship Wrestling. One thing I think deserves pointed out, John, is one of the reasons I don't think the DEA certainly has pursued World Championship Wrestling with the same fervor as Vince McMahon, if they've pursued them at all, is simply because, let's face it, the government likes to put itself over as much as a wrestling company does. And the government basically is going after Vince McMahon because of the scandals which surrounded him to begin with, certainly, but also because of the high visibility level of the World Wrestling Federation compared, say, to World Championship Wrestling. I actually believe that if World Championship Wrestling had better ratings than World Wrestling Federation shows did on TV, and let's face it, they both stink right now, but if it was a highly visible company, that certainly might lead to a quicker WCW downfall on something like this.
Wow.
Hot stuff.
Boy, was Mark Madden, in the most tragic way possible, was Mark Madden a visionary when he starts talking about people dying? Because in 93, we were about a year away from the whole, I mean, we're talking the Eddie Gilberts, the John Studds, the Art Barrs, the whole, when the deaths started coming for like 15 years, it was like, who's next? Man, Madden was a vision in a tragic way. He was a visionary there. Yeah,
even though steroids had played a part in some heart issues with guys when you combine that with painkillers, and it was the business at the time was really a ticking time bomb. And as you said, Anthony, the deaths started coming, and they started coming at a rapid pace with guys under 40 dropping dead.
Heart conditions and stuff. The other thing is, I don't think WCW ever buckled. I don't think they ever instituted anything.
No, they didn't.
I mean, I think that's why Scott Steiner stayed so long there. For being honest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he was there in his prime. You think the WWF didn't want him at some point, but if they knew he was going to pass, they weren't going to offer him. You guys even talked about it here. At one point, you refer to them as the incredible shrinking Steiners because they're still in WWF at the time.
Yeah.
You mentioned right after this that WCW is currently engaged in contract negotiations with Sid Vicious, Jim Hellwig, and somebody else who you said is just clear. And you said you just saw pictures of Hellwig where he looks bigger than he's ever looked. But yeah, this does feel like you're kind of like starting to scope down on the steroid thing yet again. Go ahead, Anthony.
Because John, I know you were a big, based upon the Billy Graham interviews and the reports you were a big anti-steroid guy. And when you first started talking to the Warrior, he was off the gas because he was so lean back in the summer of 92, I think, when he first started talking to you, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he was. And then obviously seeing recent pictures and then, obviously him starting to work again, he was bulking up again. And, that was for me also because I started talking to him about the overseas thing. I believe it was in February, March. Because that was, I didn't talk about it publicly, what I was putting together. And then seeing pictures and then dealing with him, and then he became so difficult. And then I was in the back of my head, I'm like, well, the guy's also juicing up again. So, I mean, how hypocritical it is of me to advocate for the steroid abuse that's going on. And then I'm fucking talking to Jim Hellwig about headlining my freaking tour.
Yeah, about being the main event. And because that's part of this whole argument you guys have too, is they're pushing the people where they're pushing. Even Madden talks about it. The guys who are on the independent scene are doing it because they see who's getting pushed there. You guys straight up called out Too Cold Scorpio. You're like, he's putting on a lot of size, and for what? He doesn't need it. He's so good.
Yeah.
But he's afraid he's not getting pushed without it.
Yep.
No, 18 and 19-year-old Anthony owned about 4 different Ultimate Warrior shirts. Why? Because I wanted to be that guy. I contributed to it. Sad to say, I contributed.
Yeah, and you guys do start talking about the psychological effects on steroids on here too, which I thought was pretty cool. You talk about massive mood swings. You were saying that there's rumors you heard. You don't want to talk about the shows, but you had heard firsthand accounts of some independent shows where people who were on the gas were flipping and trying to intimidate these promoters. Were you talking about your argument with Hellwig without trying to talk about it?
I don't recall. That doesn't seem to ring a bell for me.
It sounds exact. I thought the same thing, Marsh.
Because you were talking about massive mood swings.
I was going through a lot at that time. It really was. I'm trying to, because obviously the radio shows are not making money, and I'm still trying to promote. I'm still trying to do things. I'm still trying to make a living from a business that really I was never able to, if you look at it. It was kind of it was an interesting time for me. My weight was ballooning up incredibly too, because I was so stressed out, and I at this time I was probably 350,
and it's easy in New York to balloon. When I lived there, that was the first thing I did was put on a ton of weight. You'd think I just got into college. Just everything around there.
John, how much of that do you think was mental? I'm asking this question because I've been a fan and a patron since day one. I listened to episode 1. Things were a lot more freewheeling back then. You sounded like you were having fun, but now it sounds like this is a job that you're getting frustrated with because you're not making money at it. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and you knee deep in it, and then I'm planning another convention in my head, and there was so much of it. I was so deeply involved with it without being a member of the WCW or WWF team at the time. I was out on my own. I was being criticized for things, and there's more heat that comes when I sell a show to a promoter in Dallas, which will be covering in about a month or so.
I'm going to encourage all patrons and people listening to this podcast who haven't subscribed yet for $5 a month. You should do it. Listen to the first 5 or 6 episodes, how freewheeling and how loose and how much fun you were having. John, I love you to death. This is a far cry from the John Arezzi I'm listening to today.
Yeah.
You sound weathered at this point.
And we're going to get into that too, because we start getting into some of the callers, and the callers in the second one too. Your attitude towards these callers are way different. If you remember, just a few months ago, I said it sounded to me like certain times when you had no guests and it was just callers the whole time, that you felt like you were having some of the most fun because you're just a fan talking to fans at the heart of it.
Yeah.
And then at this point, you're starting to get annoyed at the fans for what they're asking. The one other thing that you and Mark mentioned that I thought was kind of funny is you said, to get off topic, you want to talk about Jim Ross real quick and how you could see his thumbprint on so much that's happening there. Mark says he's never gotten along with Jim Ross, but does say, because he thinks he's power hungry, but just says, how do you think he does it, John? Like in such a short amount of time in a company like that we can see his fingerprint on everything so fast. And you're just like, I don't know. But it is kind of cool when you think about it. He gets there, makes an impact. Right before you get to the callers, you do have Micky B come over and talk about his show coming up, because you were just happy to see him. And you said he was walking around in the studio like Nature Boy, strutting around.
The Prince of Rock and Roll, 44-inch waistline and all. That was his tagline.
I'm only 37 at 38 at this point, so I'm catching up.
That's your waistline right now? 38?
It was 50. It was 50. I'm 38. So.
Wow, I just actually bought a new pair of jeans yesterday for the first time, and I had a 44, and I used to be a 56.
Good. Oh, good for you, man. Good for you. We need John Arezzi to last forever.
Yeah, I got under 270 on the weight, so I mean that's not a problem these days for me. I mean, it's being able to buy a pair of pants, and it's a smaller size. And
my problem is beer is so tasty.
Yeah, well, you did quite a bit of work if you had a 50-inch waist, and I know Marsh lost an incredible amount of weight as well. Yeah. So maybe we should get a sponsor like Ozempic here with us.
Ozempic, yeah. Let's get through your callers for the morning show.
Yes, let's.
I got Adam from Levittown and Brian from Long Beach back to back.
Ah, very nice.
Do we have a caller on the line here? Okay, hello, you're first. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah.
Hi, John. It's Adam from Levittown.
Hey, Adam, how you doing?
Pretty good. What's up with Cactus Jack? How's he doing?
I spoke to Cactus last night, matter of fact, and he's going to be out for quite a while. He will not be returning to the ring, my estimation, August, September, which is pretty sad.
Yeah,
but that's just the deal. That's the deal.
Huh. And I read Mark Madden's editorial in the Torch, and I got to agree with it 100%.
It hit right on the money, you know, and just reading it and just looking at the two federations and looking at the independent scene and hearing some horror stories, this is a problem that continues, and it's getting worse. It's not getting better.
Yeah. I mean, McMahon's company is like pretty much, I'd say, about 98% clean.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, WCW has like all these guys, and they're pushing more and more with the steroids, like the Cole twins and stuff like that.
Well, you don't know for sure who's on, who's not. We're not going to point fingers at any specific individual, but you could look, and if you have any kind of intelligence at all, you could see.
Absolutely.
Well, listen, I appreciate your call, Adam.
Just one more question.
Sure.
Who do you think is going to win the King of the Ring?
I really don't know. I haven't even been. I would have to say Bret Hart has got to win it now. You know, I don't think. I initially thought Lawler, but just with the whole thing where I think Hart is going to be challenging Hogan at SummerSlam this year, he's got to get a big push. Unless there's an angle that goes down with Hart, which puts him into the situation with Hogan for SummerSlam. Do you have any predictions yourself?
I think Hart, because they would set up the SummerSlam match. But don't Hogan and Hart have like a little real feud going?
Yeah, they do. I'd love to see a SummerSlam main event where Hogan gets pinned 1, 2, 3 and he's not supposed to. I'd enjoy that more than anything else.
Well, it seems like McMahon is living off of Hogan's demands here, so if McMahon might be fed up with it.
He's not short of an ego, this Hogan.
Definitely not.
Neither are some of these other guys that are out there, one thing about the WWF, a lot of people have said they've been the best thing for the business and the worst thing for the business, They have created a lot of international superstars, okay? Guys that when they leave the Federation, they're superstars around the world. But they have this idea in their head that they're better than everybody else, I'll speak more about this stuff in later weeks.
Yeah,
I'm a little on edge this week about several things.
Yeah, because Hogan says, "Give me the belt, or I'm not showing up at Mania," and then he was in Japan, and
they're all self-centered.
And he compares his belt in Japan to a Cadillac, and the New Japan belt to the Rolls Royce.
Yeah, they're self-centered. They don't look for the good of the business or the good of the particular company they're working with. They're all individual. They just want to achieve for individuals. That's why there's no union in wrestling. These guys are all in it for themselves, and they don't care about anybody else.
Yeah.
All right, listen, we'll take another call, and I appreciate your call again, Adam.
Okay, John, take care.
Okay. 661-1440 is the number to call here at the program, and I'm a little hot today. I'm just a little disgusted with the whole business. I just really have never felt like this before. I can't take it. 661-1440. We'll be taking more calls here at the program. And I want to remind everybody, tonight on Pro Wrestling Spotlight on WEVD, we're on from 11 till midnight, 10:50 on the AM dial. The Warlord does want to join us tonight, and we'll talk to him about his recent problems. Okay, we're going to go to Brian from Long Beach. Brian, you're next.
How's it going, John?
Okay, Brian.
When you were speaking about that, the steroid issue in WCW, you just got me thinking. To me, there's only two guys that look like in WCW they're off steroids. One of them would be the JYD, and the other one, maybe more scared than off, would be Paul Orndorff.
Uh-huh.
Because, he's not doing it, is he?
I don't know. I don't know who's doing it, who isn't. I'm not in the locker room when watching these guys shoot each other up with needles. I don't know. I have no idea. You could just look, like I said, you could look and you could see somebody, and you could see their size, and you could wonder how they got that way.
Yeah, and I was just wondering, because, Jerry Lawler's making a big issue about him being the king of wrestling.
Yeah.
You think, because I just, started thinking about this, I was thinking if Mr. Perfect wins, wouldn't it be a great grudge match at SummerSlam, like the Battle of the Two Kings?
Oh, I'd love to see that.
And like something like the loser leaves or something?
Yeah, they should definitely do a good angle like that.
Okay, thanks, Sean.
Take care now. Thanks for your call.
Lots to unpack in that segment.
You were definitely talking about fighting with Warrior.
Yeah.
Yeah, not only that. See, and I was talking about how they become international stars. And
You're angry. You're angry.
Yeah, because now what's coming back to me is like, because these guys, the guys that were in WWF that I was bringing overseas, they were all starting to talk to each other about how much they were going to get paid on the overseas tour. So even though I was negotiating individually, and then I get a call from, and I'm not going to mention names, but it happened multiple contracts that they had found out that this guy was getting this or this guy was getting that, and then I have to slowly be bumping people up. So I had to give them more money than they initially agreed upon. So that was driving me crazy.
You were upset. I can tell without even talking to you. I could tell listening to the recording, something ain't right with John.
No, I was in the middle of negotiating with, there's 30, the guys like Conan and Masquerita Sagrada, Espectrito, Ted Petty, who he also rented the ring from for the tour, Johnny Rotten, but those, everyone agreed, Sunny Beach, they were all fine with the contracts, but all the other guys were, even though they agreed, they're slowly like bumping up what I initially agreed to pay them.
Because their ego, they don't want to get paid less than that guy. Well, I'm better than this guy. Well, that guy doesn't deserve it like I deserve it. Like for Jake to pretend that he's a bigger star than Warrior, I mean, at no time was that ever the case. No. He's much better wrestler and performer by far. But was
as a star, Marsh, I'm on your side. As a star, he was not at Warrior's level.
Yeah. So for him to be all like, how dare you pay that guy more than me is also like,
right. And then I have, Paul Heyman, who, he didn't even give a shit what I was paying him. He just wanted to, he said, I want to go. And he was wanting to go because he gets a chance to meet Conan. He's doing his, intel because, he's getting involved with Todd Gordon more. So, and then it's like, I wanted to give the booking assignments to Paul, working with Kevin Sullivan. And then Jake is wanting to book.
John,
there's infighting between, like, Jake is like, well, why should he be the booker? I should be the book. It's like, it was a bunch of shit. And I was totally inexperienced at dealing with that type of level of insanity.
John, realistic, when was the last time you talked to Paul Heyman?
It was in the 90s, man. Or actually, no, it could have been it was just a hello, but it was in Nashville. When I was first row ringside with my nephew, and he seen me, and he came up to me and said hello, and he was like shocked to see me. And that was the same show where Rey Mysterio was working, and he saw me in the first row, and he jumped out of the ring and hugged me, and he, that was kind of cool. But yeah, that was the last time I saw football. It was probably somewhere between 2005 and 2010.
Yeah.
And I think all the shows in there.
And just think you gave him his start. Just think you gave him his real start.
Gave who his start?
Paul Heyman.
I didn't give him a start.
Well, you know what?
I gave him a lot of publicity, a lot of exposure.
He perfected his persona on the Pro Wrestling Spotlight.
I would think that Mick Foley did more than that because he used to come on to practice his promos. And his development. But I gave a lot of publicity too.
If Foley is one, then Heyman's 1B.
Yeah, I would say that. I wouldn't say I made them. Those guys are geniuses to this day.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was mutually beneficial in a lot of ways.
Oh, totally, because they were great guests, and I welcomed them every time they came on there, and they were good friends, really good friends.
That is cool, though. He just said hello, shook your hand, and kind of kept walking?
That was Paul, back then in Nashville. Yeah.
Huh. I got one more clip from the morning show, because you are talking about the steroid thing going on in the independent shows. And I do think that the Mark Madden thing where you're talking about the massive mood swing was I have a feeling that was as relevant to the Warrior thing as this secondary one where like these guys on overseas have egos. Like I feel like that one really dug at you.
Reading between the lines now that we could do that 30 years later.
Yeah. Right, because I was listening to both these tapes. I was trying to like find the right clips because I was like, he's pissed about something. And I'm going to try and figure out if we can piece it together.
Well, you got your answer.
Yeah. So this is James and Richard Nievo's back.
James, you're next.
Hey, John, what's up?
How you doing, James?
Yeah, speaking of the drug problem in wrestling, I mean, it goes out to the independents, too. I mean, I remember I went to an independent show. I'm not going to say what federation or anything. But after the match, I was meeting with some of the wrestlers outside when they were going out to their cars. And there was one guy who was a champion in this particular federation. And I tapped him on the back. I said, good match tonight. And his eyes were all glazed over, and he looked straight up in the sky, and he said, thank you. And it was eerie, because, I mean, I've known this guy. I mean, I've been watching him for years, and just to see someone like that, you've respected for so long, it shows that the WWS cleaned up its act, but a lot of the other federations really need to, get out there and start doing something.
Well, when you talk about drugs, you're just not talking about steroids and the unfortunate situation about this wrestling business, and the way I'm discovering more and more and more is that these guys have such a grueling schedule. These guys have been on the road when wrestling over the last few years, when you're traveling 70 days and not with a day off, it is a very easy thing to become. It's very easy to become addicted to steroids, to other drugs as well, just to be able to make it through the next show in the next town. Yeah. And there's a very serious problem in this business that's got to be addressed. And it's not just steroids, it's everything else.
Yeah, and there's another thing I want to mention. WWF is, I believe it's made a lot of long strides in wrestling because, I've been writing the newsletter for a while, and I called a while ago, like about a couple months ago, to verify a story that I heard. And once I got up to one of the assistants up in the booking and marketing department, they told me point blank, we do not work with newsletters, and, it would be futile to continue to call here. The other day I called the World Wrestling Federation and received a comment about something, and they told me that if I sent the newsletter and an outline regarding what the newsletter is about, that they would work with me now. So it shows that the World Wrestling Federation is starting to come along now, and they're starting to realize that, it takes the entire business to work together in order to get particular companies to work.
Interesting that you mentioned that they said to send an outline. I might as well say it. I was approached this week by somebody who told me that he had talked to Vince McMahon and suggested that Vince McMahon do my EVD show.
Yeah. And
that shocked the hell out of me. I don't know if it's going to come down or not. It's still in the very early stages of negotiations. Not even in the negotiation state at this point. But a very good friend of Vince's I talked to me this week and said that he spoke to Vince and he suggested that Vince do my nightly show. What that means, I don't know.
Well, it doesn't seem so inconceivable now regarding everything else that's been going on with, Vince's, in my opinion, he's really becoming, starting to realize how the sport works, and it's not just his company, it's everyone.
Yeah, but it's like, if all these problems didn't happen a couple years ago, would all this be happening today? Now, they sent wrestlers out to St. Louis last week for a wrestling convention at their own expense. Ted DiBiase, Blackjack Lanza, who was one of the road agents, I believe Bob Backlund. They flew him to St. Louis for Mike Lano's roast of Sam Muchnick, and that is unprecedented for the WWF. Unprecedented. They've never done that before.
Yeah, well, it's all the steroids. I mean, once McMahon started getting knocked down with the steroids scandal and the sexual harassment scandal, I mean, if it wasn't for the steroid scandal, do you really think that Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels would be like the main event of Survivor Series?
No, I do not.
Two huge guys going at it,
That's right. Well, listen, I appreciate your comments and thoughts today.
Thank you, John.
Take care.
Bye now.
Okay, 661-1440. Come on in. Richard Nieves is here. Richard, how are you? Haven't seen you in quite a while. You hanging out for a couple minutes, or are you going to Philadelphia today? No. Is these the results from last night from Philly? See this? Richard Nieves, one of the top wrestling photographers in the business today, comes in with the ECW results from last night, direct from Philadelphia. And let's just go over them here. We had...
You end up going through the entire card that you had right there. But Richard Nieves walked in there, and he corrected a couple things that you said, because you couldn't figure out what it meant at first. You're like, does W mean they won? He was like, yeah.
Was Richard one of those guys that would just show up spur of the moment?
Mm-hmm. As did James.
Yeah, James was there.
We had over the course of the run of the show, people would do that. Yeah.
I would have been one of those guys, just for the record.
Oh, I know. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You would have been a mainstay.
So I'm looking forward to when you get Vince on, because that's coming up pretty soon.
Yeah, I can't wait for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying. I was, racking my brain to figure out who a good friend of his would have told me that.
I'm going to guess he never shows up.
Oh, there's no way.
Of course not. Yeah,
not in the next 3 months. Is it possible it was Jim Ross? I thought you and him were on the outs.
No, it wasn't Ross. It was a good friend of his, and I'm trying to remember who I communicated with back then. That was a really good friend of Vince McMahon's.
Yeah.
Because there weren't a lot of them out there. I'm thinking that, the first thing that popped in my head was it could have been Georgianne Macropolis.
Oh, really?
Because I know
wrestling's best friend.
Yeah, and she always was treated very kindly by the McMahons, by Vince Jr.
Wow.
So it could have been her.
Wow. Yeah, I could definitely see her saying that too. You should do it. And he'd be like, okay, I'll think about it. You know what I mean? Like trying to be nice to her,
Trying to be nice to her, right.
Yeah, I could see that for sure.
And by the way, cancel my Chatterbox subscription, pal.
That's cool that she was I mean,
she always tried. She always tried to help. And
I think what a lot is I think the disconnect we have with like my generation and your generation as like fandoms go was you guys did have a crazy level of access by our standards then. Like the fact that you could go to the Madison Square Garden thing and then just see Vince walking around and talk to him. The fact that you had pictures you wanted to sell him, so you just went into his office and did that. Like to think about that nowadays, I couldn't possibly go with a couple photos I have and say, I'm just going to go show these to Vince real quick. You know what I mean? Like you guys had the ability to make
have an office there at the Garden. It was in the hallway.
Yeah.
But
Johnny, backstage at the Garden.
And he'd be saying, yeah, I like this one of Graham, this one of Koloff, this one of Parisi.
Yeah.
John, are you still going to the monthly Madison Square Garden shows, or is that done?
No, it was
do they still do that?
Well, they don't do them anymore, obviously.
In
about 30 years
they
ago.
were.
93. Oh.
They were running more frequently 30 years ago, but for me, it turned into just a house show. When they started doing the same show across the circuit and not making the Garden special, I didn't see any reason to go.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Don from Sayville. I wanted to shout him out because he calls in and just says how much he loves listening to your show because of how much he feels like he's learning.
We're still learning, aren't we? All.
Yeah, we are. And then he says that Hogan should go off and see how well he's going to do on his own, that Vince needs him. And you say, but go where? And you tell him that if Hogan's going to be around to torment someone, let it be Vince. So I like that.
Quick mind that week.
Yep. Now let's go to the night show, Pro Wrestling Spotlight. You said you had Randy Bassett in studio?
Yes.
Who's Randy Bassett?
Randy was my account executive at WEVD. He's the guy that would show up almost every week and hang out while the show was there. And also during the troubled steroid sex scandal, all of those, he'd be like the monitor for the station to make sure that things weren't getting out of hand. But he was a wrestling fan too, and he really respected what I was doing. So he was a good advocate for me.
That's cool. You don't always shout him out.
Until the money started, being late in payments. And of course, it's like, we got a little problem.
Yeah.
Like everything else you had to contend with, money was late.
Well, yeah. If it wasn't on time and you can't go on or whatever. So it was a constant weekly struggle. But at that time I had Whole World Paints, so they were covering most of the cost.
Don Laible comes on, does a capsule. What I think is interesting, and I like to ask Don sometime, he consistently at this point has his capsule and then a couple bullet points he wants to talk about after the capsule. Before he gives the show back to you, he goes, and a couple more things. I'd like to know how you decided what made the capsule, even though it was newsworthy versus not, especially when he repeated those same bullet points on the night show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a question for Don, actually.
Yeah. Next time
we bring him on.
Yeah.
Since he's back on video.
Yeah, he's back. He's got the ring light. People who get the Patreon reunion will see he's got a ring light. Donnie was one of my favorite parts of it because he was just so proper, so happy to be set up in his computer. And you do mention a lot that you're about to have a meet and greet appearance, a signature signing at Holbro with Jake the Snake. Did this go super smoothly, I imagine?
I guess we'll know next week. Haven't heard the show yet.
You'll find out. Now I'm going to bring us to our first clip from this one. You had John Clark going over the ECW show.
Okay, what we're going to do first, we got the Warlord on hold, and we're going to go to John Clark first. John was just covering that big event in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. ECW in action in Philly. Eddie Gilbert, the booker for this. Now, John, are you with us?
Yes, sir. How you doing?
How was Philadelphia tonight?
Well, I'm glad to be in this city. I mean, it's with Eddie Gilbert in here booking these shows, it's turned into this unpredictable Memphis-style wrestling, and it's just incredible.
Well, we heard so many great reports regarding last night's television tapings for Sports Channel, ECW, booked by Eddie Gilbert. Hawk from Legion of Doom made an appearance tonight. I understand Terry Funk was down there?
Yeah, he was wrestling Jimmy Snuka. I had to run home to be on the show, but I'm sure there was going to be a big brawl there.
Paulie Dangerously causing havoc?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So, you've been covering the business for a while, John. You got the Wrestling Flyer newsletter. What is the prognosis? What is the your feeling about what's going on in the Philadelphia market right now with ECW?
Well, I tell you, I think it goes back a long way because, of course, Todd Gordon, who is the backer and promoter of ECW, he was a backer for Joel Goodhart and his TWA, and he lost a whole ton of money under Goodhart. And now he has come in here, and he is slowly but surely putting together a product that I think could someday turn into a full-fledged territory, with weekly TV and house shows and everything. Eastern Championship Wrestling, I think, has arrived, and especially with Eddie Gilbert booking. And he moved Kevin Lawler, Jerry Lawler's son, has moved up to Philly to start booking buildings and stuff like that.
Wow.
Doug Gilbert's up here now in Philly, and it seems like everything's being put together. The angles are starting to make sense, and all the storylines, and it's all just coming together.
On the big first big house show, Saturday, June 19th, and we're going to take a bus trip down there for sure. We're taking off from EVD that night. There will be no show. We're going to Philadelphia for this big house show.
Yeah, well, that'll be, incredible. They set up an arena in South Philadelphia. It's the ECW arena, and they're going to turn that into a great wrestling place. And on the 19th, it's going to be a house show. When they're taping television, it can't be as no holds barred as they'd like it to be. But on the 19th, they're going to have a Texas Chainsaw. I guess a Texas Chain Match Massacre, no disqualifications and no time limits and no nothing, as Eddie Gilbert wrestles Terry Funk, and
Yeah, we plugged that. We plugged it earlier tonight. A big, all the stipulations and the entire card sounds very, very exciting. I understand. I was talking a little bit about J.T. Smith taking a phenomenal bump, I guess 30 feet last night off a balcony.
Yeah, well, I tell you, there's a lot of young guys in this organization who are trying very, very hard. Along with Todd Gordon, to get the promotion off the ground, and a lot of them are incredible athletes. And J.T. Smith is one of those guys. He loves working. He loves the people also. And I believe he was wrestling a Dark Patriot, and they were brawling up, and they went up through some stairs up to a broadcast booth that's hanging from the ceiling. It's about 25 to 30 feet from the ground. And J.T. Smith was thrown off that balcony, and he fell about that 33 and hit the floor. And I believe he, when he came in tonight, he was on crutches, and he bruised his arm, and he has hurt his leg. They don't know how serious his injury is, but he did wrestle tonight, which is amazing.
Putting his body out on the line.
Yeah.
I tell you,
sounds like Cactus Jack.
Yeah.
Remember when that was as extreme as it got?
Yep.
Yeah.
Balcony fall.
Yeah, that was a big deal back then.
Yeah, that was really cool. I like how excited you guys sound by all this. Do you think that this was still prior or after you took the guy to the ECW show?
I think it was after.
This sounds like you'd been to one of the shows.
I'm thinking to the last one. Yeah. I don't really remember the exact date, but it was definitely because I didn't go this week. I didn't go that weekend.
You didn't go that weekend.
No, so it had to be the show before.
But you and Donnie do talk about in the earlier part about how exciting ECW is right now.
Oh, yeah. We're very, very excited about it, especially with Eddie getting the opportunity to be the booker and Paulie there working hand in hand with him, not predicting the problems that were going to surface, not too distant future where Eddie loses the book and Paulie comes in and takes it over. And Todd Gordon.
This was a solid year before it became Extreme. This is
it was.
This is the germ, if you want to say it.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. I mean, I wish I could talk to Paul because Paul. When I have to. People will know. I mean, when did that officially happen? When Paulie took over for Eddie?
I think it was September or October of '94. I could be wrong.
Because that's around when you did the tapes. Yeah, because you had tapes of Paul coming on right after. And so when you think about where you would have been on your show, you would have been after hiatus.
He debuted Public Enemy. When did he debut Public Enemy? Wasn't it in the fall of '93?
You would know that better than me.
That's a good point. But also at the same time, listening to this breakdown of ECW with Eddie Gilbert, a lot of what we've always heard was that Eastern Championship Wrestling became Extreme Championship Wrestling. But listening to all this, it was well Extreme before Paul.
Yeah, it was Extreme, and they see the screw job they did with Coraluzzo in August of '94, and that's when they threw the NWA title to the ground. And because I had them all on the show right after it happened. I had Carluzzo on, I had Paulie on, I had Shane Douglas on, I had Todd. I had all of them on. It was a freaking content. That was my first show back after the almost year-long hiatus.
Yes.
So we're coming up on the hiatus, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah, we're about 3 months away from it, actually. 4 months away.
The paint company must have pulled their sponsorship.
That's exactly what predicated it. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It was right after. I think it was right in October. It could have been right after the '93 convention. That it was it. I was done.
I have to.
You sounded ready to go at that point. You sounded ready to go at this point.
I was ready to go.
No, I can tell from listening from episode 1, you sounded like a man who was, I don't want to say beaten, but you were weathered.
I was like just getting tired of it. That's all. I was getting tired of it. I was like, it's not fun. And dealing with the guys, not just as a guest or booking them on a personal appearance or a convention. Now, bringing them on the road. And the things that even took place on the road in Singapore and Hong Kong and Jake and, the crack and all of the things that were going on. It became like, I don't like,
I will guarantee you
business, man.
I'm going to guarantee you in 1989, you'd not think you'd be buying crack for wrestlers.
Well, I didn't buy any crack. All I know is that the dude disappeared at the airport to go to Jamaica. We're at JFK, and he disappeared for 2 hours. And that's where he went. He went to get his candy for the overseas tour, where you would get executed in public if they catch you with narcotics.
I'm going to make that into a t-shirt. John, I did not buy any crack. He got it himself.
John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight podcast. I did not buy crack.
Yeah. Confirmed. He got it himself. Yeah. Very cool. The other thing about John Clark, he talked about his Bill Watts interview coming up, and he says he holds nothing back. He addresses all the racist remarks he made. He talks about a letter that he sent to Hank Aaron afterwards. I thought that was pretty cool. And I wonder if I could dig up that article at some point. But you immediately go from him to Warlord.
Yeah.
Now, you said you had booked Warlord and the Power Twin.
I made them my tag team champions.
All
Powers of Pain. Yeah.
And he had not. Were they actively the champions, or were they about to be?
Well, I started a promotion, and I had to promote it overseas. Like, this is who's coming. The IWAS Tag Team Champions, the Powers of Pain, managed by Paulie Dangerously.
Yeah,
which was kind of cool. And Jake was the champion. And
did you have any shows prior to it going overseas?
No.
Okay.
No, everything was done for overseas.
Okay. So it's sort of like when Pat Patterson became the IC champion. You just kind of said, "Oh,
yeah." It was like, there was no tournament. It was like, all right. Reggie Parks was making belts. I needed belts. So I got a heavyweight title. That heavyweight title, just give you a little, there's a very famous picture of Conan having a tug of war with Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
And you could probably find this on the internet. That's my title.
Why?
Conan actually took that to WCW and wore it in WCW.
Oh,
wow.
I would pay you for that. I would pay you for that today.
Later on, and I gave Pena all my belts because he was promoting them in Mexico, the IWAS, and this is after even Scholar had removed himself because I was promoting AAA in '95 with Pena. Did some shows, but yeah, when they debuted, Conan had that title, and he still has that belt.
He does.
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah. He says I have it. I'm going to send it to you. So
ask him for it back. Damn it.
Well, he's got it. He said he was going to send it. That was 2 years ago.
I want it.
I should reach out to him.
I'd like to have it, and he's got. I think he's got the tag team titles too.
That's amazing. And then we know Ron has the mini title.
Yeah, and then there was the light heavyweight championship belt, and I'm going to scan some pictures for you, Mars, so you could put them in this episode of the belts when I got them, and they were all laid out nicely. They're beautiful belts.
Yeah.
And Conan I was promoted Conan overseas as our light heavyweight champion, even though he was pretty big.
Should we reach out to Conan before I leave San Diego and see if he'll let me swing by and grab those belts?
Oh, he lives there, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to be that guy. I would love to get them back. Believe me, he said he had them in a closet. They were there, but I'd like to get them back someday. Yeah.
All right. Well, this is Warlord. I pulled 2 clips. I'm only going to play one because the second one is him dealing with just the callers. And I thought he handles the callers real well, and I really liked it, but it wasn't that newsworthy. The only thing that comes out of it, now that I think about it, is one of the callers asks about why they went singles and how they both wanted to go singles. But he said, trust me, you'll be seeing us together again soon.
Well, that was my tour.
Yep.
Now, did he address the steroid? Are you playing the beginning? Because then I'll follow up when we're done with this on the other side to talk about why I insist.
John, as a fan, completely removed from the business, and Warlord at this point was a relic from 2.5, 3 years earlier who hadn't done anything.
Not in Singapore, not in Hong Kong, not in the Philippine Islands, where they were watching tapes that were probably a year or so old on their TV.
Yep. Here's the beginning of that interview.
Without further ado, we're going to bring on the Warlord. Are you there, sir?
Hey, John.
How are you doing tonight?
Good.
Well, as you know, my background in this business for the last few years, I've kind of been covering a lot of situations that have gone on behind the scenes regarding steroids. This particular week, I was getting calls, a ton of calls on the hotline regarding a situation. I guess it was a published report out of Minneapolis that you had been arrested for steroid possession. I spoke to you a couple of days ago, and you wanted to clear up some of the facts. Now, the reports were circulating to us is that you were arrested on Monday, and I understand that's not even correct.
No, that's not correct.
Okay, can you tell us, please? I know you probably have lawyers standing by to watch what you say because this is probably still an ongoing legal situation for you. Can you explain to the fans exactly what happened?
Yeah, what had happened is, as everybody is thinking, is that it happened on Monday. It didn't happen this last Monday. It happened in November of last year, and I had a package sent to me through the mail from Europe, and it was intercepted in customs, and they came to my house, and they had a search warrant. I went ahead and I showed them right where everything was, gave them anything that I had. It was just my own possession. I sold nothing. I don't believe in that. And it just circulated. It got bad publicity, and it just ended up sounding like it happened last Monday.
Yeah. Steroids is a topic that's been very controversial, obviously, over the last couple of years in pro wrestling. A lot of the performers out there feel it's a necessity to use the steroids to enhance their performance. Now, this happened a while ago. Must have put a scare into you about the legalities of all this and the usage of the steroids. Now, what is your status with this? It's a problem, I guess. I guess it's a problem when you're
accustomed to taking these over the last several years.
Right.
And so I know it's tough for you to talk about it, and it's a tough topic to cover. You know, and this is probably the first time on this program that I had someone who had some of these problems talk about it on the air, and I got to commend you for that, first of all.
Well, these days, you know, as in all sports, you know, the steroid usage is there. As in my case, as a lot of people don't know, I was wrestling about 330 times a year. I was wrestling over 300 days a year. And when you're traveling and you're always on the road and you're trying to let the people see you looking really good and you're trying to keep your body put together every night, you're looking for something that would go ahead and keep your body put together all the time. And steroid at that time was the one that held it together.
Yeah. And, of course, now the laws changed regarding even the possession of steroids. What would you advise guys coming into the business? Do you advocate these? Do you advocate the usage of steroids, or what is your stance on all this right now?
As far as the way I feel, I'm not going to have nothing to do with steroids. I recommend guys come into the business. I would say not to do it. It's not worth it. It's not worth the trouble. It's not worth the legal trouble. And if you can do without, do without.
Vince McMahon and the WWF have really seemed to have cleaned up their act, instituting their policy after all the negative publicity came down a couple years ago. WCW down in Atlanta, Georgia, still has no effective policy. Do you think the major organizations should have regular testing?
Well, I know Vince when I was there. Vince, that's one thing I'll say for Vince, is that his testing was, all the time. He tested sometimes a couple times a week. You'd come in, and they'd have a test win for you. You had no time to prepare none. You had to go do it. So everything was legal right there in that. And I would say, down the line, WCW is going to have it also.
Yeah, the time has come for that. And the independent scene is a little bit less to monitor because guys are out there and there's promoters just running shows. But I think there should be myself personally, just because everything has been written about it, there should be a policy instituted.
Well, I think with kids being such a big part of wrestling these days, that they really want to clean up the act on drugs and everything, and that's why I think more and more the WCW especially coming up is going to be doing the drug testing on all the guys.
Well, we're certainly happy that you were able to talk to us a little bit about this problem, and hopefully your legal problems will be everything will work out fine for you, and you continue on as one of the top performers in this business.
Well, the people are going to see me out there. I'm still going to be out there all the time.
All right. Fire away. Wow. I insisted he come on because there was the erroneous report that he was busted. And then when I told him, I was like, I can't bring you. He goes, that happened in November. So that's why I was like, you got to come on and straighten it out. And he did. So that was.
Do you believe a word he says?
No.
No, and
I believe it happened in November. I don't think it happened that week. I believe it was, released or the public records, or he was going. Who knows? But him saying that, and especially, I don't know what they were doing. I mean, all I know is like when I had him overseas, he would scare the shit out of me.
Yeah, I've heard the story.
He'd be so, mood swings and getting angry, had to eat, had to work out. When are we going to eat? When are we going to get to the gym? When are we going to do this? When are we going to do that? He had this menacing look. But other times he could be gentle as just like the sweetest guy.
Classic
Barbarian. Barbarian was always sweet. Barbarian was like this incredibly great, cool dude. He really was.
Conrad Thompson fans will say, Tommy Young.
Yeah, Tommy Young. Oh my goodness! Yeah, that was. I had to do it, and I'm just kind of like, as we were listening to the clips, I went and got the cassettes just to make sure that I can accurately tell everybody when I actually left the air. So the actual final show, it says here, was Pro Wrestling Spotlight episode 245. And that was on 11/27/93.
So we have some time.
Yeah, but here's the other part of it. A lot of shows are not here.
Oh,
like there's like it becomes like maybe I didn't care, or that I didn't tape them, or because I'm looking, and after this, this is episode 218 in the big scheme of things, and 219 would be the NYG show. I do have show 220, which says it's from 529, and even though this is 515, so apparently, like the week of 522, I'm not on the air.
Is it fair to say at this point in time
that I didn't give a shit?
I don't want to say, but I could tell this was not the guy from 89, 90.
I was just so many things going on. Then, just kind of giving people, giving everybody kind of an overview here. Then I come back with Pro Wrestling This Week on 6/5/93, show 221 and 222 from 6/5 with Paulie and Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert on together. And it says crazy show on the tape. So I don't know what we have in store. And then show 223 from 6/12.
At that point, you're trying for a comeback. And it's so tough to come back from, dare I say it, the passion was, from your voice, I can tell the passion was gone.
Yeah, it could be.
I wonder also if you're starting to think about what you're going to do next, because it sounds like, because you get some questions here, which we're going to get into that are great about the business itself. It sounds like that you were just trying to make a business out of this. So it's probably why you were recording all of it. You didn't know what you were going to be doing with it all. And it sounds like you're getting close to a point where you're going, I'm going to find a new business. So you might not feel the need to have the recordings.
Well, I also had high hopes on international promoting.
Yeah,
because the promoter I was dealing, the guy, he was a booking agent more than anything else. He dealt mostly with international touring acts. Like he did the Peking Circus in the United States year after year after year, and he might still actually be doing it. So he dealt with a lot. He take, like LaToya Jackson, send her overseas, or Jose Feliciano, a lot of music acts. And a lot of novelty acts. So wrestling was a novelty act to him to sell to his overseas promoters.
Yeah.
So I thought, like, all right, this is going to be great. We'll go to Southeast Asia, and then we'll go to India. And, he was talking about China. Because he's dealing with all these international promoters, so all wanted to bring wrestling there.
Hell, you went to Singapore, so yeah, you had to believe it.
And the Philippines and Hong Kong, it was, that was a really cool. We got treated like gold. I mean, we had our own island in the Philippines that the promoters gave us, and everyone had a great time. They all got paid well. We all got treated like stars over there. A lot of press, a lot of publicity. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of like I was segueing into that. I was segueing into being promoter. And then, you come back and he sells a show to a Texas promoter in the week before the AAA show. And it was a sold show. And the poor woman, because they're running free shows in Dallas every week with Jake, and he's in my main event at a paid show. And so, I got a lot of heat for that one, and the Torch. And I think Bruce Mitchell called me a carny or something like that in the media.
Bruce Mitchell disrespecting you. Oh my God!
Yeah, but it was that guy is a complete piece of crap. And then and the more and people feed off of it.
Yeah.
But I was in a whirlwind of what am I doing? Where am I going? I'm getting sick of it. And
John, just know that in 2023 you won the Bruce Mitchell fight. That guy is a piece of bleep.
I know that he parted ways with Wade a few years ago, but
for good reason. For good reason.
Yeah. So I don't want to get into all that stuff, but I'm like, but I was getting heat, and of course, when Meltzer puts in the Observer that the show drew 200 people, but the Japanese magazines covered it pretty extensively because I had a great show in Dallas. But anyway, it was like this is what I was doing. And I'm trying to do the radio show, and then you lose the sponsors, then you lose your airtime. Then I'm back at NYG, and then it's like everything's going to unfold here on this podcast.
John, quick question. I apologize. This is not a subject normally, but I don't hear much about the Hornsteins when you're back on the morning show. Are they still around?
Alive?
Okay.
But I was paying, the freight week after week. It was a cheap show to put on the air at $200 or whatever it was, $100 for an hour.
In the early goings, the Hornsteins were like a character by themselves.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. By the way, all you people listening, Patreon, $5 a month gets you all that
Yeah,
stuff.
that first year in '89 was really a lot of fun. I mean, because you have the twins, you got Sonny Blaze, you got, all the characters that were there at NYG. It was really that was kind of like the first season.
Yeah.
And it was the most innocent season.
And I was 16, 17 in '89. It was the best time of my life as a wrestling fan.
Yeah. No, it was fun. I mean, we had a lot of fun, and then it turned into more of an insider show. Then it got ugly with the scandals, and then all the other shit that used to go on. You used to have to cover, but we have some really great content. So leaving the air when I did in November, and then I return just to kind of let everybody know I get back on the air then on 8/28/94. Show 246 is what it's listed, and that's when all the shit hit the fan with ECW becoming Extreme and Dennis Carluzzo. And
you were so ahead of your time, though.
I did a lot of interesting things, man.
Does that piss you off?
No.
You were so ahead of your time. God, if you'd come today, you would have reached the entire world.
Yeah, wouldn't that be something to turn back the hands of time? Hey, listen, it was like, I've always been this entrepreneurial guy all throughout my life. And no matter what I did in music, and I'm still entrepreneurial with the baseball podcast with Gibby every Monday.
Love it. Love the Gibby show.
I'm
a baseball, as you know, I'm a baseball guy.
Yeah. We had Danny Jansen on this week. Anyway, we're going all over the place here, but yeah, I've always been an entrepreneurial guy, except for the years that I really made decent dough, and that was when I worked in corporations and radio and GAC here in Nashville, and I had a 17-year run where I was doing incredibly well financially. It's not like I'm destitute today, but it's like, but I'm still entrepreneurial.
Yeah, you're always up to stuff. After Wardlow was on, or not Wardlow, Warlord.
Wardlow, yeah.
I mean, it's spelled the same almost. You had Mike Memphis in the studio talking about a comedy show he was going to be doing, and I put that in here.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it.
Okay, we are back, and next weekend, a very big weekend right here in New York City, Cafe Ariel is the place to be. Friday and Saturday night. Now, next Saturday, we'll be broadcasting live direct from Cafe Ariel. It's a special night. The Wrestling and Comedy Connection, Entertainment Plus, and Fine Tuck Music present this big extravaganza, starring former WWF Tag Team Champion, great wrestling manager, great individual, and super comedian, Luscious Johnny Valiant for 2 nights. Special guest star appearing, somebody I've known for 20 years.
Oh, yeah, about at least 20 years, John.
21 years, 1972, I think it was.
That's right, from when you had the Freddie Blassie fan club.
That's right, and Mike Memphis.
How you doing, John? John, you're going to be taking my business away with those sideburns you're growing there, man.
I'm growing some sideburns.
Johnny Arezzi, man, you're going to be doing Elvis impersonations pretty soon.
Now, you've been on Donahue.
I've been on Donahue, I've been on Geraldo, I've been on Oprah, Current Affair, I've done Vegas, I've done the Grand Ole Opry, I've been in 2 films, 2 commercials. Not only do I do a serious Elvis act, serious Elvis act, I also do a comedy act as well. That's all right, John. It's all right, man. Just don't let it happen again.
Sorry about that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And that's how I got my start in show business, actually, was by doing comedy and impersonations. And then as I made a lot of contacts and I started to get a lot of notoriety, then the Elvis thing just went in, and I had a lot of success with that. So I still do the two acts. And those 2 nights next week, I'm going to be doing my comedy act along with my good friend, Luscious Johnny V, who I think is one of the funniest guys I've ever met.
Now, I can't wait to be down there to see this.
It's hilarious. He does his Bruno Sammartino impression, Bruno trying to pay his taxes, and Bruno as an airline controller, and does wrestlers as they were little kids getting potty trained. I mean, he's got his mind is like a computer, and he's in that stage.
So it's not just stand-up comedy. Larry, you can attest to this. You know Johnny as well.
Absolutely. One of my greatest thrills was being insulted by Johnny Valiant in Westport.
So he does like wrestling stand-up comedy. Like everyone's going to relate to what this guy's talking about if you're a wrestling fan.
Oh yeah, and even if you're not a wrestling fan, I mean, wrestlers are known; they're big media stars anyway, so everybody knows who they are.
And we're talking about bringing Jake the Snake Roberts up there to sign some autographs, take some Polaroids, and maybe some other special guests. That's next weekend. Now, let me give the fans out there some information, then we'll give a number for tickets and reservations. Cafe Ariel is right on Theater Row. It's 432 West 42nd Street, and that's right off of 10th Avenue or 9th?
Between 9th and 10th.
Between 9th and 10th Avenue. Friday, May 21st, Saturday, May 22nd. 2 shows nightly, 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock. There's a $20 cover, $8 minimum. Now, if you're a Pro Wrestling Spotlight listener, you'll get a discount off of that, right, Larry?
That is correct. Anybody who calls the number, and that's 212-239-4331 this week, and makes reservations and says that they heard this on the Pro Wrestling Spotlight.
Gotta say they heard it.
Will receive a $3 discount on each ticket.
Okay, and of course, to charge tickets is also another number.
That's right. That's HitTix, and that's 212-564-8038.
That's great. That's next weekend. Cafe Ariel, Mike, Memphis. Mike. Now, if someone asks you a question, I'm trying to think of a question to ask you that you can answer like Elvis, you know.
Ask me anything, man.
Elvis, who was your favorite wrestler?
Freddie Blassie. You want to know something, John? Freddie Blassie actually met Elvis on the set of Girls, Girls, Girls in Hawaii. Elvis was a big wrestling fan. At that time, Elvis was the WWA. Freddie was a WWA world champion. And
5-time world champion.
5 times,
That's right.
and he was on the set
Pencil
with
neck.
Elvis at that movie. Took pictures with him and everything.
You're a big Fred Blassie fan. I know that.
Very big Freddie Blassie fan. The greatest of all time. Man.
Joined the Blassie fan club when I was running it.
That's right. I was just an infant baby back then,
and
20 years ago.
Yeah, and you own many of Fred's colorful outfits. And
the jackets that he wore in WrestleMania, and his boots, his shoes, his trunks, his shirts. I've been one of the fortunate people over the years. I've not only got to meet my hero, but I actually got to know him on a personal basis.
He's a man, a king of men.
Yes.
A king of men.
Yes. And, John, I want to say one other thing. You said that next week at Cafe Ariel on 42nd Street, there's going to be Jake the Snake and Johnny V and all these big stars. One star you alluded to mention was John Arezzi, because you're going to be there, man.
Thank you very much.
And John is going to be there broadcasting live. And I remember when you broadcasted live in Brooklyn and out here in Manhattan, those are always great events to come to. No matter what you're promoting there, it's just great to come and see the live broadcast, because you always get the special surprises and special gifts, and you don't know what's going to happen that night. So everybody just call the number, come out to Cafe Ariel on 42nd Street, see John Arezzi, see the comedy show, and you won't be disappointed, man.
Okay, the number to call for reservations, once again, 212-239-4331. Now, we will see you all there next week when we broadcast live. I want to thank Larry?
Yeah.
Larry, I know you for a long time,
yeah,
too.
I know.
I'm losing my mind here today. I'm just going a little wacky.
Wacky, baby.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Larry Feintuck, for appearing here tonight, and also Mike Memphis. We'll see you guys next week at Cafe Ariel.
Yes, sir. Until I meet you again, may God bless you. Adios.
Thank you very much.
John, do you mind at this moment if I answer the question the way you asked it back 30 years ago?
Go ahead.
My favorite wrestler, my favorite man, classy, Freddie Blassie, baby. You know the king of rock and roll loves the king of men because we are the same type of man. Oh, thank you very much, baby. I love me some Freddie frickin' Blassie. Sorry.
There you go. Now, we were looking for Mike Memphis this week, and he went into your body.
It's crazy, right?
Mike Memphis.
No, I could tell that you asked him to answer the question as Elvis, and he was like, "Oh, I love Freddie Blassie." I thought I've been playing this for the entire day.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Freddie Blassie, the greatest WWA World Champion of all time, San Francisco legend, baby. Oh, baby.
Anthony, always a pleasure, man. I think I got our answer as far as why there wasn't any shows next week. At least in real time 30 years ago. Because either Cafe Ariel, where we were supposed to broadcast live, we couldn't put it together technically. There had to be a little technical issue then. That's the only thing I could think of is why we were not on the air.
Unless you just didn't tape your live show.
Well, yeah, we were supposed to do a live remote there. So either two things could have happened. Either we had technical problems setting up for the live remote with EVD, or they didn't pay whatever the live remote fee that I was charging them at the time to broadcast from their place.
Oh, we'll see if you bring it up on the next show, because if you were promoting this and didn't happen, then we'll see.
Right, because obviously there's no shows from 5:21, and these are 5:15, there are no shows. And then we're back on the air on 5/29, which is in 2 weeks, with the show 220. There was no daytime show, but we do go on EVD at 5/29/93, show 220.
Yeah.
And that's the last shows. Well, I guess no. Then there's a couple more before we go to Southeast Asia, because we broadcast from Southeast Asia too, and then WEVD goes away, and then when we come back, it's kind of going back to NYG every week.
Gotcha. So here, you're talking about Mike Memphis. You knew him for 20 years at this point, because you know when you were
because he was a member of the Freddie Blassie fan club when I was running it in 72, 73.
Yeah. Which is why I did think it was pretty cool, even though he didn't answer it in question, how he's like, oh, I want to talk to you about Freddie Blassie for a second, because you guys had that connection.
For the record, I was born in 72.
I was in my room with a little typewriter making noise, writing up the King of Men newsletters.
So good. At what point did you lose contact with Mike?
Mike used to go to my conventions. So 94, or I guess when I segued out of wrestling in 96, when I had enough, and there was a time there in 95. Yeah, 95, when I finally really left for good. In February, I went to work for John Regna's company in New Jersey. And we booked some IWAS shows in the U.S., few and far between. I was doing AAA stuff. I did that big show in Chicago in 95. So I was promoting most of the year, and I was working, setting up the Peking Circus for him in Reno, at the casino and I spent Christmas and New Year's of 95 in Reno with the Peking Circus, handling promotion and PR, and so that's what I was doing then. And in 96, I was promoting a little bit here and there, and then I finally got out of the business and went into ad sales for country music radio.
So John, in those Vegas spots, like you didn't see him?
What's that?
Even in the Vegas spots, you didn't run into him or anything?
No.
Huh.
No. I think Mike and I, the last time we spoke, was in the mid-90s.
Huh.
John, it sounds like you got out while the get was good.
I had enough. It was that last show I did in Arizona. I never forget it. And I lost a shitload of money. And that's when Mil Moskowitz was in the main event. It was at the Arizona State Fair. And that's when he came in with the plane ticket. I had bought him a plane ticket, and then he came in and he upgraded himself to first class, and he wanted the difference. And I told him no. And he called me even a year later, like asking for reimbursement. And I said, I've been out of fucking business for a year. I mean, I'm out of it. And I told you back then I wasn't giving you the money for the first class ticket.
John, I recall you were a little less friendly at the final time.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Because then I was bankrupt. That was it. I was done. I was bankrupt. I had to file bankruptcy in 97. I was just like, I was fucking done.
Mike went on. He's one who was on Sopranos, right?
Yes, he got whacked by Big Pussy.
Yeah.
He got hit over the head with a hammer.
So you hadn't seen or heard from him since the 90s? And then
no, I was surprised when I saw him on The Sopranos. I was like, holy shit, there he is.
So great. Yeah, I just want to make sure. I mean, I want to talk about it for a minute, because it's like we've been having a lot of cool pop-ups of these old guests. And when I heard Mike, I was one of the first things I asked John. I was like, do you think we can get Mike? And he's like, I can't find him. And then I wouldn't know how. So I was like, oh, I bet I could track him down, thinking I was some sort of sleuth. And I was like, dude really did pop up out of nowhere, end up on Sopranos, and disappear.
Yeah, that's what happened. He disappeared after he got whacked by Big Pussy.
Yeah. That's it.
And ironically, because there's another dude called Mike Memphis who's an Elvis impersonator who's on Facebook, but it ain't the same dude.
Yeah. No, he's in the UK. Totally different guy. I found both of them too, and I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Let's get to your callers real quick. I have one call from last week that we didn't get to, because you then get your first caller here references that last call you got last week.
Okay.
So I'm going to play the call last week.
All right.
And then we're going to come right back, and I'm going to tell you about this call coming up.
Okay.
Oh, let's go to Scott from Staten Island. Scott, you're next.
Hi, John. My question is about the Ultimate Warrior.
Okay.
I picked up a copy of the Wrestling Eye.
Yeah.
And they said that he had returned to, like, independent.
Well, Ultimate Warrior...
As the Dingo Warrior or the Warrior.
The Warrior. He used the name The Warrior over on a tour of Germany.
Right.
That just completed, in Austria, I believe. And they were sell-out houses. A lot of them were sold-out houses. So he is only working where he can make the most money.
Right.
And that apparently right now was overseas.
Right. He's not going to be coming over in the New York area at all.
No, not to my knowledge.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
If I wanted to get into wrestling, how can I go about it?
Wow. In what capacity?
Anything. I'm looking to get into wrestling.
Well, I'll tell you what. Write me a letter. I'll give you the address, and I'll try to tell me what you'd like to do, and maybe I could steer you in the right direction. Okay?
You then give him your address, and you close up the show. You're trying to get off the air. But then that leads into this call, your first caller of this week of the night show, and it references back to that.
And we got some time. We got about 10 minutes for calls today, which is great. Let's go to Chris from Queens. Chris, you are next.
Hey, John, how you doing?
Okay, Chris.
Listen, my brother's really into wrestling, and he wants to know, how do you break into wrestling?
You know something, Chris? I'm going to answer this question to the best of my ability. I've had a very difficult time with professional wrestling over the last couple of weeks. This business is a sleazy, sleazy business. And here I am trying to make a living at it. So, who am I to talk? I mentioned last week to one of the callers who called in, how do you break into pro wrestling? I said, is it too long of a question to answer on the air? Write me a note. This week, and the mail is still coming in, I've been besieged by letters from fans who want to break into wrestling on the broadcast side as a wrestler, male, female, young and old. We must have got about 50 letters this week just on that one phone call. And I'm going to try to respond to each and every one as far as your particular need, what you'd like to break into. But for all intents and purposes, I would advise you not to get into this business because it sucks, okay? Let me just put it that way. It's very, very difficult to make a living in professional wrestling. There's just so many, there's so much backstabbing. There's just people from the newsletters on up to the major federations are stabbing each other in the back on a daily basis just for the fun of doing it. So maybe I'm a little bit different. I'm not trying to screw anybody. I'm just trying to make a living, keep my radio show going, entertain the fans, give them autograph sessions, and hopefully down the road promote some exciting shows. Right? What else can you ask for?
Yep, wraps it up right there in a nutshell.
Do you remember getting all those letters?
I do.
Do you remember any of the advice you gave anybody at the time?
I probably didn't answer any of them.
Don't do it. Stamp. Don't do it. Stamp.
That was my
Get
statement.
the hell out of the business.
Yeah.
That was my statement. Yeah.
I was wondering if you even pushed some of them towards any of the wrestling schools you knew about,
No, I mean, I do remember a lot of people trying to break in. I do remember getting letters that week, and I just didn't, from what I recall, I didn't answer any of them.
They also just called Sonny.
Right.
Sonny's a star maker.
Yeah. Mark Delmonico.
Yeah. Look what he did with him.
I'll tell you what, guys. Arezzi, Marsh, Pyrus, we could challenge the House of Black for the AEW Trios title.
Yes.
Easily.
Well, that was a wild show, wasn't it, guys?
Hell yes.
Because all these revelations and
fun.
all this chaos that's going to be upcoming as you listen week after week, you're going to hear it all unfold right here. And we're going to have some incredible guests coming up. And when we do remotes from Southeast Asia, and we do remotes from Los Angeles with AAA, and even from Dallas, from the Dallas show, we record from Dallas, and there's a lot of stuff coming up. Just looking at the names, even guys that had not been on the show before, like Stan Lane coming on, and Funk coming back, and so much here. But it's all kind of chaotic from this point forward, everybody. Strap yourself in. It's not going to be like the early days anymore.
Because it's been so calm, cool, and collected since '89. Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's been good.
Hey, it's been a revelation, right? I mean, it's for me, this is like even starting this thing up with Brian Last a few years back. And,
John and Marsh, time spent with you is always time well spent.
Yeah. And I know you're busy. You got another engagement coming up in just about 10 minutes. So we finish.
Yeah, I will be doing the AEW Dynamite report for our old friend Mike Johnson and doing the post-game show with my friend Corey Strode.
There you go. You're a busy dude, Anthony.
Hell yes.
And that's why you could call yourself executive producer, because your responsibilities are vast, my friend.
Yep.
Thank you.
And we'll bring you on again real soon. We'll make sure.
I cannot wait. Guys, I'm going to bid you adieu. Be well.
Absolutely. Thank you, man.
Thank you so much for coming on, man.
Great for you to come on.
Pleasure to be here. Have a great night.
Good. You too, my friend.
Very good.
All right. Anthony Pyrus, executive producer on the Patreon page.
Yep. I only had 2 more clips left anyways, but I really only wanted to play the one because there's just the way you were with some of these guests. In the last 3 calls you did, you rapid fired them, and then you go to your little outro, and it was a very unique way to end the show. And I thought,
I know what you're talking about. We can't play because of copyright strikes, right?
I can play up until it.
What do you mean?
You're correct. The way you lead into how the show ends, you preface, you set it up very well.
Yeah,
a little story. So I'm going to play that, and at the very beginning of the song, I have like the first couple seconds of it, like the first 4 or 5 notes.
Yeah, and then when you come back, I could tell people if they actually want to hear the entire song, where they can hear it, because it is still to this day one of my favorite all-time songs from somebody that has a very special place in my heart to this day.
It's very good. So partially I wanted to hear this because of the way you are with your fans right now, the callers. You're a little shorter. You're kind of goofing with them. Earlier you talked with Ian, which also he called in clearly baiting to plug someone's TV show. And you could tell it from a mile away, and you still went, oh, go ahead. Like you played in the whole thing. And then at some point you go, all right, you got your plug in, and you hung up and moved on. So it was really good. And then one guy, Frank, calls in and says that Hogan should retire because he doesn't look as good off steroids. And so you go, what do you want to watch him inject it into his butt? I was like, what are you doing?
And you can hear all of these shows in their entirety on patreon.com. /John Arezzi.
But listen to these last 3 callers back to back, and then your outro.
But we're going to go to Grady from Manhattan. Grady, you're next.
Hi, John. How you doing?
Hi, Grady.
I got a few questions for you.
Okay.
First of all, I was watching WWF Superstars earlier today, and they said that next week there will be a debut of a new wrestler named Adam Bomb.
Yes.
Do you know who that is?
Of course I do.
Oh.
Brian Clark, the guy who was the Night Stalker in Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
Oh.
Yeah, he's being managed by Johnny Polo, who is Scotty Flamingo.
Oh, all right. And my second question. Now that Big Van Vader's champion, I heard that they're going to build the promotion around him, but it seems that Van Vader doesn't seem to be pleasing the fans as champion.
Van Vader's supposed to please the fans?
I mean, everybody hates him.
Well, that's the idea.
Well, who do you think would be able to beat Van Vader?
Ric Flair, Starrcade.
Ric Flair.
Yeah, I think they're heading to that confrontation.
Oh, yeah?
That'll be a hell of a match in December if that comes about. I think that's what's going to happen. I think Flair will win the title from Wyndham in June, and then they'll build this big matchup with him and Vader, and I think that'll be a phenomenal match. Vader is a believable monster in that ring.
Yeah.
Isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Look what he's done to everybody that he's worked against.
Yeah.
Okay?
All right. Thanks a lot, John.
Take care, and we'll talk to you soon. 212-477-5610. Another few calls we could take here. And, of course, the very favorite name that I like saying when this particular individual does call in, he's from New Jersey, and he is known as Pushpack.
Hi, John. How you doing?
What is your name?
Pushpack.
I like the way you say it. Pushpack. Great name.
Yeah, my friends I love making fun of it.
Boy, you must have a lot of fun at school.
Hey, yeah, I have a couple of friends that love wrestling, too, so I'm happy about that.
What can we do for tonight? PP?
You know what? WCW should get hot stuff, don't you think?
WCW should do what?
Get hot stuff, Eddie Gilbert.
Yeah, well, Eddie is an outlaw. Let's put it that way.
And I heard, you know how they're replaying the GWF shows on ESPN, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I heard that Sid Vicious was wrestling there. Is that true?
Not true.
I heard Sid Vicious and this person versus Colossal Kongs.
No, Sid is not wrestling for Global at all. Sid is due back in WCW from what we understand in June. We're going to take another call here. I think it'll be the last one for tonight, and we're going to go to line 2, Russ from Staten Island. Russ, first-time caller?
Yeah.
How you doing, John? Look, me and my friends came up with this awesome fan club. It's the Hulk Hogan We Hate Hulk Hogan fan club, right?
Wait. Slow down.
The We Hate Hulk
Slow
Hogan
down. Slow.
We Hate Hulk Hogan fan club.
And this is actually a fan club that
No, we just pretended. We have the top 10 reasons why people should not cheer for Hulk Hogan.
Okay, is it clean?
Yeah, it's clean, no problem.
Okay,
All right,
shoot.
number 10, knows no technical skills.
Okay.
Number 9, the following are better wrestlers: El Matador, Virgil, Damian Demento, and Jim Powers.
Number 8.
Number 8, his movies are no epics. Number 7, has only won the belt fairly on 2 occasions. Number 6, everybody knows Bret Hart is better.
Number 5.
His use of steroids is a bad influence.
Number
4, has never beaten Ric Flair.
That's right.
Number 3 is the ringleader, tightrope walker, and the head clown of the circus in WWF.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 is has teamed with fellow bad actors such as Mr. T. And the number 1 reason why people should not cheer for Hulk Hogan is because there's only 2 real Hollywood blondes in Hollywood.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. I tell you, interesting. We were like rapid fire tonight, weren't we? For rapid fire. I'm not taking no more calls tonight. I've had it with calls tonight. I want to do something special to end the show tonight. Now, to close the show for tonight, I was in the music business for a long time, for 8 years. And while I was in the music business, I had the opportunity and the pleasure of personally managing a female artist by the name of Patty Loveless, who is now on Epic Records in New York. She's been on MCA Records for the last 4 or 5 years. Very big country superstar. I picked up her new album today. A couple of the cuts were really good, and since I buy my time here at the station, I can basically do what I want, I guess, with the hour. I want to thank my producer, Bruce Jacobs, tonight, Larry Feinduck for coming in, my engineer, Tom, Randy Bassett for hanging out with us. We're going to talk more wrestling with you next week here at the program. But I want to play this cut from Patty Loveless that's on Epic Records, and she'll be appearing here in New York, a quick plug, July the 9th at Westbury Music Fair. Check her out. She's a great artist, and you'll enjoy this tune. Something a little slow to end it tonight. Until next week when we talk about wrestling, this is John Arezzi. Good night, everybody.
Yeah, Patty Loveless. That album had just come out. It was called Only What I Feel. It was her first album on Epic Records. And the song that I was playing there was called How Can I Help You Say Goodbye? A very sad song, which they actually released as a single, but not till March of 94. And it went up to number 3 on the Billboard charts. That album had a really good life. That kind of vaulted her from, she was already close to being an A-lister in Nashville, but that album on Epic Records, her first release on Epic Records, and Patty's had several albums, was the one that really vaulted her in a way that the success that she got as ACM Female Vocalist of the Year and CMA Awards, and Patty this year was inducted into or will be inducted in October in the Country Music Hall of Fame. So a very prestigious honor for Patty Loveless, who I got an opportunity to work with early on, 1981. While I was working for the Mets, I went into a club one night. She was in a cover band, a rock band, and I wound up eventually quitting my job at the Mets to manage her for 4 years.
Yeah, I recognized the song as it came on too. So that song still is popular for sure.
About saying goodbye.
Yeah,
from leaving her best friend in her little neighborhood as a kid to getting divorced to then losing her mom. It's all about how can I help you say goodbye.
Yeah, I was getting choked up listening to it, and so I was sitting there knowing how close you were to all of that.
Yeah,
I mean, it might be impossible to remember, but were you emotional just listening to it?
Yes, I was emotional listening to the replay when I heard it. When I realized, because on the cassette it says Patty plug on it on the cassette tape, and I was
so
like,
even 30 years ago, this is when I plugged Patty.
Yeah. Yeah, it was on the it was on the cassette, the original cassette. Patty plug is what it said, with Warlord and John Clark next to it. And hearing that song, it brings back a flood of memories, because I remember hearing it for the very first time when I got that album. It was an album. I didn't buy a cassette, or I don't even think it could have been a CD. It could have had a CD, but whatever it was. And I heard when I heard the entirety of the record. That's the song that I said, this is a freaking hit. big hit, and it became a big hit for her.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, because it's one of my favorite things that we don't talk about often is when you write a note on one of those, because that's a note you wrote immediately after.
Yeah.
And the fact the first thing you wrote on there was Patty plug, because you even mentioned it here. Look, I buy my time on this show. I can do whatever I want. If we don't want to talk
Right.
wrestling, I don't have to. And
Right.
so what I want to do is put over Patty Loveless and tell everyone where to find her album.
Yeah.
And tell everyone about how she's coming to town, because this is my show to do that.
And
In
I got
2
the chance to
shows-
see her in Westbury because I just gotten back
Did
from
you?
overseas. Yeah, and every time Patty played either the theater at Madison Square Garden or she played Westbury Music Fair out on Long Island many times, I'd go to every one of her shows. And,
Did you ever get to see her?
backstage- Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was always backstage, and I haven't seen Patty now probably in 3 years. It was at the Opry, Grand Ole Opry. And probably 5 years. I never forget it. It was I was managing Sarah Darling, and I saw that Patty was on the bill. And Sarah Darling, who I was managing, had played the Opry at that time about 60 times. And I asked Pete Fisher, who booked the Opry, I was like, Pete, would you be willing to put Patty on the show with Sarah Darling on the show with Patty? It would kind of be really special for me. And because Vince Gill was also on the show.
Yeah.
And Vince Gill is the guy that introduced Sarah Darling to the Grand Ole Opry. And he also did that great song with Patty, Go Rest High on the Mountain. So Pete said yes. And I remember the marquee that night. It was a picture of Sarah Darling, my artist that I was managing, Patty Loveless, the artist that I managed years and years ago, and Vince Gill. And I still have that. I still have that to this day, and that was a very special night for me. And I think it was 2014 that could have happened. But yeah, I still go to the Opry occasionally if there's somebody I want to see, and I can make a call. And it's cool about backstage at the Grand Ole Opry is because you are actually backstage. You're watching the show from the stage.
Yeah.
Which is always cool. And then the dressing rooms, there's about 20 dressing rooms there. And it's just a phenomenal place. And being, because Sarah, eventually, she played the Opry over 80 times, which is a big number for an artist that really never had a major record deal. Her top hit went up to number 34 on Billboard when I was working with her.
It was just kind of nice to hear too, in 2 shows where you were so clearly disenfranchised and sour about the wrestling business. You moved back to country music, do you not? After this,
after I got out of the wrestling business, yeah. Then I went to work for WMJC 94.3 country station, and then I moved to the New York City country station in 1998, which was Y107, the biggest country radio station. We're the ones that promoted Garth at Central Park, and we promoted the concerts at the World Trade Center every Thursday for lunch in the summertime. Right in between the towers, we'd have a stage set up. We had sponsors like Sam Goody, which is a big record retailer, and Chevy, and we had the Dixie Chicks and Tim McGraw and all these great country artists every Thursday. And then I got the call that they wanted to hire me here in Nashville to open up the offices for Great American Country TV, and I came and I stayed in the country music business literally till the pandemic year.
Yeah,
because it was pandemic year, and I was running a company with a friend of mine in New York called Bandwango, which was a artist development company raising money for artists through their fan bases on social media.
That's cool.
Take that money and we would open doors for them in Nashville.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a cool concept. And then the industry shut down and I was done with the music business, and I was kind of aging out of it because the artists were so younger now, and their values were a little bit different than I was used to. And it was just I aged out, But, I did in the modern era, as I call it now in country, I did my last big discovery was Kelsey Ballerini, and found her at a pizza place in Franklin, Tennessee in 2012. And she was just a kid. Invited her to my office to sing me a few songs. Thought she was great. And now she's one of the A-list elite artists in the music business.
That's cool. That's awesome. I just like because you can hear the warmth in your voice at the end of the show.
Yeah.
Versus the bitterness at the beginning.
It was like, here's somebody that I worked with early on who made it really big, and I was so proud of her, and I was so happy for her success. Like even today when I see Kelsey on TV, I'm like happy, and Patty getting into the Hall of Fame is just freaking incredibly amazing to me, because she deserved it for years, and they finally let her in.
That was actually my big surprise when you'd mentioned to me a couple weeks back how this year she was going in, was that I didn't understand how she wasn't already in.
She's an Opry member, and she, you know, being a member of the Grand Ole Opry is a very prestigious thing. And Kelsey is now an Opry member.
That's cool.
So, which is very, very cool. It's a fraternity, and well, Patty is, you know, she's 2 weeks older than me, so she's 66 herself, and I'll be sure to be there that night that she gets inducted in October.
It's really cool that it might sound harsher than it should, but it's really cool that she, every time she sees you, she knows who you are. She remembers you. That, that a lot of people.
She was the love of my life, man.
I know, right?
I mean,
but I'm just saying, like, because there's a lot of people who will get big, and then it's like that those small windows in the beginning of their career just seem to mean a little less than they do now to some people, but to someone like her, it didn't. It still means everything.
Different. Kelsey changed. Changed.
She doesn't know you no more.
No, you know, initially, you know, I'd be in all the articles in the early press, and then she was discovered by, you know, John Alexander from Black River Entertainment, but you know, once the first big hit happened, her first #1, then it kind of changed. The narrative changed a little bit.
Yeah. See, that's
and
what
then
I mean.
Then trying to see her in 2014, I didn't get any callbacks, and she was headlining the Ryman Auditorium. And the last sentence in the chapter I wrote about her in the book, Matt Memories, was the last time I saw Kelsey was in 2014 at the Ryman Auditorium. I bought my ticket on StubHub.
Yeah.
So that was just kind of my way of saying thank you as well.
Yeah. But that's what I mean. So the fact that happened with that, I mean, it's kind of like the perfect example of what I'm talking about, is that happened so much that it warms my heart to know that Patty's not like that. That she still, after all of these years, have never erased you from the narrative and appreciates you and all of that. Like that.
Well, I mean, cool. It's a personal thing, the friendship, and she knew how much I believed and devoted my life to her over those years. You know, Patty doesn't like to talk about those years because those were the darkest years of her life. You know, she was in a rock band. She was in a bad marriage. There was drugs. There was alcohol. There was a lot of horrific things that were going on with her personally.
But you were that good thing in that era.
But yeah, what I did to her, did for her, I think, is like when I first met her, she was playing this little shitty club. It was like a biker bar, and it was rough. And there was, you know, she was in this house band situation, and I saw her, and I was like, what is she doing in here? She's just an incredible, talented girl and beautiful and could sing. I never heard anybody sing like her. And as I got to know her, and she, you know, I said, why don't you have any dreams? Well, you know, I'm married now. Those dreams are over. You know, I said, you're fucking 24. How could your dreams be over? You know? So I think what I did for Patty more than anything else in this life of despair that she was leading at the time with no future, I think I put the fire back in her belly, and I kind of showed her that maybe there is a chance that this could happen. And it was her brother Roger that eventually got her the record deal with MCA Records in '84. And I got, actually it was 85. I'm sorry, it was 85. And when she called me and told me that she got signed by MCA, I was living in North Carolina managing a band called Panic, new music band, and we were touring with Billy Idol and Sheila E. and the Romantics, and once, you know, and I was down there, you know, hoping beyond hope that someday I'd be reunited with Patty and maybe help. But I knew nothing about country music at the time. I didn't like country music. I was a rock and roll guy. And then when she called me and said she got signed by MCA, that's the day I decided to move back to New York.
Hmm.
And I did. And then I started listening to country radio to hear her when her first single came out, and watching TNN, the Nashville network, and to see her. And we kept in touch over all the years.
And I'll close it up on this too. Because you're in this moment 30 years ago where you're falling deeply out of love with wrestling,
mm-hmm.
Did her timeliness of releasing this album, do you think that sparked the direction for you that you ended up going?
Well, I was still 3 years away from quitting wrestling.
Yeah.
But it was making me melancholy for it.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with country music. I fell in love with all the acts that were coming out at the time, the Dina Carters and the Susie Boguses and the Alan Jacksons and the Vince Gills and Garth and all of these acts that I kind of would be listening to country radio all the time then. And then when the opportunity happened, when I decided to get out of wrestling, because I saw an ad in a newspaper for a salesman for the country station on Long Island, I made the move, and I was fortunate enough to be hired, even though I was like 300 plus and didn't have a car, didn't have a suit. The guy gave me a shot for 30 days. He says, all right, 30 days. And I sold. My first account was a country music a nightclub that wasn't on the air with the station at the time. And the second month I won Salesman of the Month. And the guy loaned me, the general manager, Tony Michaels, loaned me money to get a car. Because I was borrowing cars to go to work.
Wow. So you got a new car every day. You're like, wow.
Well, I mean, it was a family friend who was kind of retired, and she let me use her car. And then, that's when my income went. Every year it doubled.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's an interesting story. It's all in my book. It's called Map Memories.
I wonder if there's any place someone could buy that book.
You can buy it everywhere. Anywhere you buy your books, and it's on audio. It's all audio on Audible too. So if you want to hear me tell the story in my words, it's there.
Actually,
or if you want an autographed copy, send me an email, john@mapmemories.com. We'd be more than happy to sign a copy for you.
Will you autograph my Audible version?
Yes, of course I will. A digital imprint. I'll use AI. I'll use AI for that.
There we go. But yeah, that was the show, and it ended
what a fucked up. I mean, not fucked up in a way, but it was kind of like we were all over the place. What a friggin' psychological cluster this show today with Anthony and the stories and the chaos and now the Patty shit.
Dude, I'm saying if this was your last show you ever recorded, it would have made sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This feels like the end, the way you did this one. And then ending it with how do you say goodbye.
Got a lot more to go.
I know.
It only gets worse from here.
Because I think this might be the day you checked out. This might be the day that you said, I've had enough.
It was the beginning of the end, although it lasted another almost 3 years.
We're going to find out, but I have a hunch that everything after this is going to be
Tell your friends.
Afterward.
Become a patron. Make it all happen. For $5 a month, listen to all the archives, listen to all the chaos, listen to my entire fucked up life unfold every single week right here on the show.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Marsh, thank you so much. It was good to have you as a psychologist today. And of course, Anthony served his purpose as well.
Thank you so much, John. It's always a pleasure to dig deep into your past and get those demons out.
Yeah. Well, everyone has them, right?
Yeah. It's good. I appreciate what you do for us and letting us share.
I've never been in jail for a long period of time, though. So for no reason. But I've spent a night as a scalper in Philly in jail. That's right.
For scalping?
Yeah, SummerSlam, 1990. Oh, you weren't with us at the time, were you? My first convention, I bought enough tickets at SummerSlam in Philly for 2 buses.
Yeah.
And I filled up a bus and a half. So I still had 30 tickets.
So you're just
like me as an idiot, get off the bus. And I had all the wrestling fans with me, like Fred the Elephant Boy, his brother, all the fans. And I get off, it's a sold out show. I get off the bus and I figured, all right, I can make some money here. And the first person I approached to buy tickets was undercover police. And as soon as that happened, I'm cuffed and brought into the arena and get put in jail for the weekend. And then the wrestling fans who were on the bus went to the police station after SummerSlam to try to bail me out. And I couldn't see a judge till like that Monday morning.
So good. That's crazy. Were you trying to make money on him, or were you doing face value?
I was an idiot. I was trying to make money on him.
So good. So the first person you walked up to, you're like, "You want to buy this for double?" And the guy's like, "I'd love to." And you're like, "This is really easy."
And then click,
boom.
there go the cuffs. and then I get put into the arena, and who's walking by? Sergeant Slaughter. And he looks at me. I'm sitting on the floor with my cuffed. And he looks at me and he just laughs. He goes, "John Arezzi," and he just shakes his hand and laughs and walks away.
So good. You're like, "Great, Sergeant Slaughter's making fun of me."
Holy shit.
Awesome. John,
right,
another good one.
Thank you, Marsh. I appreciate it. We'll see you next week, my friend. All right, that's going to wrap up this edition. I think we spoke enough. If you want to become a patron after all this, if you feel sorry for me about my crazy life, go to patreon.com/John Arezzi. $5 a month gets you in the door. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel. That is at youtube.com/Pro Wrestling Spotlight, especially last week's show at Ron Scholar and all the visuals. It's really, really cool. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at John Arezzi, Instagram at John Arezzi as well. I got groups on Facebook, Matt Memories. Check those out. We're also taping a new podcast, Matt Memories with Madison Square Garden, with special guest Carrie Silken. Will be coming on the next episode. I want to thank our producer and creative director, Marsh, for the fantastic job that he does each and every week. Thanks to those Patreon executive producers, Anthony Pyrus, of course, and Joseph Holloway. And for all the patrons, for your support helping with the production costs for the show. Until next week, when we relive more zaniness with you, this is John Arezzi for the Pro Wrestling Spotlight.